The first time I heard my own name echo through the trees, I thought it was the wind, but the wind doesn't breathe, and it doesn't know how to whisper the exact tone of your mother's voice. That night still comes back to me in flashes, the flashlight beam slicing through fog, the sound of pine needles crunching under my boots, and that single delicate whisper drifting out from the dark. It said, "Ethan." Slow, soft, like a secret that wanted to be found. The forest was supposed to be quiet after midnight. Instead, it was listening. If you ever find yourself alone in Shenandoah after dark and something calls your name, don't answer. Whatever's calling isn't human. Before I tell you what happened that night, I need to go back to the moment I arrived, full of confidence and curiosity, thinking the most dangerous thing in the forest was a black bear. I was wrong. The truth is, forest rangers are trained to protect the woods, but here, we're trained to stay silent about what lives inside them. If you want to hear what really happens after the trail signs end, don't forget to subscribe. It helps this channel stay alive long enough to tell the stories no one else will. Now, let's begin. When I first drove into Shenandoah National Park, the sun was bleeding into the horizon, washing the Blue Ridge Mountains in a reddish haze. The road twisted like a dark ribbon between the trees, the air thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. It was the kind of beauty that makes people pull over just to breathe it in. To me, it felt like arrival, a new start. I had transferred from a Colorado district where the biggest emergencies were lost hikers and illegal campfires. I wanted something quieter, cleaner. Shenandoah sounded perfect. The ranger station sat just off Skyline Drive, a wooden structure built decades ago with faded green paint and a porch that creaked in the wind. As I pulled in, I saw an old Ford truck parked under a flickering lamp and a man sitting on the steps, elbows resting on his knees, cigarette glowing faintly in the dark. He looked up as I stepped out of the car. Even in the half-light, I caught the deep lines around his eyes, the kind that come from years of sleepless nights and things you never talk about. "You must be Cole," he said. His voice was calm, deliberate, like someone who measured every word before letting it leave his mouth. "Ethan Cole, from Boulder District." "That's right, sir." I offered my hand. "Ranger Mason Graves?" He stood, shook my hand with a grip that was firm but not friendly. "Just Mason. Out here, formality gets people killed. Come inside." The interior of the station was exactly what you'd expect. Maps on the walls, filing cabinets older than both of us, and a faint hum from the radio console in the corner. Mason gestured for me to sit while he poured coffee from a dented steel thermos. "Your first night shift," he said, handing me a cup. "Don't take it lightly. The forest changes after dark." "I've worked nights before," I replied, trying to sound at ease. He studied me with a kind of tired patience. "Not here, you haven't." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the static crackle from the radio. Then Mason leaned forward, elbows on the desk. "You've read the standard safety manual. You know the wildlife behavior, the call codes, the emergency protocols. Forget all that tonight." That got my attention. "Forget them? Out here, you'll follow my rules. There are things in these woods that don't belong in any manual." He reached for a laminated map and laid it on the table between us. Trails, fire roads, camp markers, all neatly highlighted. Then he tapped 3 red circles drawn in pen. "Don't go past these points after sundown," he said. "If you see lights where there shouldn't be any, ignore them. If you hear voices, ignore them. And if you see a deer that doesn't look right, keep walking." I frowned. "A deer that doesn't look right?" He didn't answer, just sipped his coffee, eyes fixed on the map like it could answer for him. After a pause, he added, "They call it the not deer. Locals started using the name back in the 80s, don't ask me why. I tried to hide my smile. Come on, you don't actually believe that stuff, do you? Mason looked up sharply. You think I'm telling ghost stories to scare the rookie? I started to backpedal. No, I just meant, listen, Cole. His voice was low now, almost a growl. Out here, belief doesn't matter. Observation does. If something looks wrong, treat it as wrong, and whatever you do, don't acknowledge it. His intensity caught me off guard. Not acknowledge it? Not even with your eyes, he said. If you look too long, it'll know you saw it, and if it knows you saw it, you won't make it back. For a moment, the air in the room felt heavier, like the walls were absorbing the sound of our words. Then he sat back, the tension leaving his shoulders. You'll be fine as long as you follow the rules. Most nights are quiet. Just remember, silence is survival. He handed me a radio, a flashlight, and a key ring that jingled like distant bells. Your route starts at Bear Fence Trail, loops back here by sunrise. Check in every 2 hours. And Cole, don't get curious. Curiosity's what gets you marked. When I stepped back outside, the air had turned cold. A low fog was spilling between the trees, thick enough to blur the road ahead. The mountains loomed like sleeping giants against the bruised sky. I took a deep breath and told myself that Mason's warnings were just the ramblings of a man who'd spent too many years alone in the dark. Still, something in his tone had stuck with me, something that didn't sound like superstition. It sounded like experience. By the time I reached the trailhead, the moon was high, full and pale, washing the forest in silver light. The radio crackled once, then went silent. The woods around me were alive with the chirr of insects and the faint rustle of leaves. Normal, peaceful. But peace, I'd soon learn, is only the surface layer of this place. Underneath it, something was always watching. The first hour passed quietly enough. My boots scuffed against the dirt trail as I followed the narrow path along the ridge. The moonlight filtered through the branches, turning every movement into a trick of the eye. I paused once to adjust my radio. Static whispered faintly across the frequency, like a breath caught between stations. It should have been peaceful, but peace felt different here. It was too still, too exact, like a set designed to imitate the real thing. I reached the first checkpoint, an old wooden fire tower that leaned slightly to one side. The stairs groaned as I climbed, my flashlight beam sweeping across empty air. The higher I went, the more the forest stretched out beneath me, endless and black. I keyed the radio. Base, this is Cole. Reaching marker 1, all clear. For a few seconds, only static answered. Then Mason's voice crackled through, low and gravelly. Copy that. Keep your eyes open. The fog's getting thick down in the valley. I scanned the tree line again. Nothing but mist and shadow. Still, a strange restlessness kept me from relaxing. I decided to keep moving, heading back down the tower stairs and onto the connecting trail. The path wound deeper into the forest, curving through tunnels of overgrown branches. My flashlight flickered once, then stabilized. When I reached the fork at Laurel Gap, I stopped to check the map. That's when I saw it, something small and white lying at the edge of the path. It was a deer skull, clean, polished, the antlers broken off. Someone or something had placed it carefully, facing the trail like a warning sign. I crouched beside it, examining the base. No dirt, no moss, no sign of decay. It looked freshly cleaned, like it had never belonged to a living creature at all. I lifted my radio again. Base, I found something strange near Laurel Gap. A deer skull, looked staged. Static again. Then Mason's voice, sharper now. Don't touch it. I didn't, just reporting. Good, keep moving. Some things out here aren't yours to handle. I wanted to ask what he meant, but the tone in his voice made me think better of it. I started walking again, faster this time. scanning both sides of the trail. That's when I heard it, the sound of footsteps behind me. I stopped. The noise stopped too. I turned, shining the flashlight down the path. Nothing but fog and trees. The forest was silent again. Maybe it was an animal, maybe not. I walked another 30 yards before it happened again. 2 quick steps, deliberate, just beyond the light's edge. I spun around, pulse hammering, the beam cutting through empty air. The silence pressed against my ears, thick and unnatural. Then somewhere off to my left, a twig snapped. "Who's there?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. No answer. I swung the light across the trees. For a split second, something reflected back. 2 glinting points, like eyes. But they were too high off the ground for any normal animal. The reflection vanished as quickly as it appeared. I took a step back, heart pounding. The air smelled strange, metallic, sharp, almost electric. Then came the whisper, "Ethan." My name, drawn out softly, almost kindly, from somewhere deeper in the woods. I froze. It was impossible. Mason was miles away, and the radio on my belt was silent. "Ethan." This time it came from my right, closer. I shone the flashlight that way, the beam slicing through fog and catching on movement. A shadow slipping between trees, tall and angular. The sound of its steps was wrong. Too slow, too deliberate. I remembered Mason's words. "If you hear voices, ignore them." So I did. I turned and started walking, forcing myself not to run. My every instinct screamed at me to move faster, but I knew panic was bait. When I reached the next trail marker, I looked down and saw prints in the mud beside my own. Hoof prints. Except they weren't shaped like any deer I'd ever seen. The spacing was off, too wide, and each print pressed deep like whatever made it was heavier than it should have been. The whisper came again, softer now, almost behind me. "Ethan." I spun, flashlight trembling slightly in my grip. The beam caught a figure standing halfway between the trees. At first, I thought it was a man, a tall one, wearing dark clothes. Then it moved, and I realized I was wrong. Its legs bent the wrong way. It stood too still, shoulders perfectly squared, head tilted as if trying to remember how humans held theirs. The eyes reflected the beam like glass marbles, unblinking, and its face looked almost right until it didn't. Something about the angles was off, as if someone had taken a human expression and stretched it over the wrong shape. My body locked up. Every nerve told me to run, but my training told me to wait, observe, identify. The thing took 1 step forward, hooves scraping the earth. The movement was slow, deliberate, unnatural. Then it tilted its head back and made a sound halfway between a cough and a laugh. Wet, broken, like something trying to imitate human speech. That broke my paralysis. I bolted. Branches tore at my jacket as I sprinted down the trail. My radio bounced against my hip, static hissing through the speaker. "Cole, report. Do you copy?" Mason's voice fractured through the noise. "Something's out here," I shouted. "Something's following me." "Don't look back," Mason barked. "Whatever you do, keep moving forward." I didn't, but I could feel it behind me, the rhythmic scrape of hooves and something heavier, following in sync. The trail curved sharply, and I nearly lost my footing as gravel slid under my boots. I stumbled, caught myself on a fallen branch, and kept running until the path widened into a clearing. I stopped, gasping, listening. Nothing. Just the hum of my pulse and the distant sigh of the wind. For a second, I thought I'd imagined it all, fatigue and fear playing tricks. Then I saw the fog rolling into the clearing. It didn't drift naturally like mist should. It moved with purpose, curling around trees, creeping closer like fingers of smoke, and from within that fog, something exhaled. Long, slow, almost human. I raised my flashlight again and froze. There, standing at the edge of the mist, were 3 shapes. They weren't deer, and they weren't human. Their bodies were too thin, too tall, their heads jerking slightly as though they'd forgotten how to move like living creatures. And all three were watching me. For a heartbeat, I stood there, too stunned to breathe. The three shapes in the fog didn't advance or retreat. They simply existed, fixed in that impossible stillness that made my mind scramble to define them. My flashlight shook in my hand, the beam cutting through haze that seemed to thicken the longer I stared. Then one of them moved, not toward me, just a small shift. The twitch of its head, the bending of a limb that bent wrong. The motion broke the illusion that I was seeing shadows. These were bodies, and they were alive. Mason's warning hit me like a punch. Don't look too long, don't acknowledge them. I forced myself to blink, to take a shaky breath, and lowered the light just enough that the beam passed beneath their torsos. My boots felt like they'd grown roots, but I willed one step forward, then another, keeping my eyes fixed on the ground. Every instinct screamed to run. Instead, I whispered into my radio, barely moving my lips. "Base, this is Cole. I need immediate assistance at Bear Fence Clearing. Multiple unknowns." The radio spat static. Then Mason's voice broke through, sharp but low. "Don't describe them. Keep your eyes down. Are they moving?" "They're just standing there." "Good. That's better than moving. Listen carefully. You're going to walk backward until you reach the ridge path. Don't turn your back. Don't make a sound." My throat tightened. "Mason, what are they?" "Things you don't have a name for. Now move." The line went dead. I swallowed hard and did as told. I walked backward, slow, careful steps. The fog curled around my boots like smoke from a dying fire. For a moment the forest was utterly silent again. No wind, no crickets, no distant calls of night animals. Then faintly I heard them, breathing, not steady like lungs, but irregular, short bursts of sound that rose and fell out of rhythm, as if each of those things were trying to remember how air worked. A soft crack echoed behind me. I froze. My heel had snapped a twig. From the mist, one of them answered with a single step forward. That was enough. I turned and ran. Branches clawed at my face. The flashlight beam danced wildly across the trees as I tore down the slope. The fog chased after me, spilling between trunks like liquid shadow. My heart hammered against my ribs, and somewhere between one breath and the next, I realized I could still hear those breaths behind me, closer now, synchronized with my own. I burst out onto a gravel access road that looked familiar but wrong somehow. The trees didn't match the map I'd memorized, and the road bent in a direction that shouldn't have existed. For a dizzy moment, I thought maybe I'd lost my sense of direction. Then I saw the light. A single headlamp glowed through the mist up ahead. Steady, bright, and golden. Relief flooded me. A vehicle. Rescue. I waved my arm and shouted, "Ranger Cole, I need assistance." The light swayed in response and started toward me. As it got closer, I realized something was off. The light didn't bounce like it should have if it was attached to a person walking. It floated steady and smooth, gliding through the fog without any sound of footsteps or engine. My relief turned to cold dread. The beam grew brighter until it hurt to look at. I shielded my eyes and backed away, and then without warning the light went out. The dark swallowed everything. I stumbled back, disoriented. Somewhere beyond the black I heard that same breathing, slow, wet, and too close. "Ethan," the whisper again. Same voice, same awful familiarity. I spun, flicking my flashlight on. The beam caught nothing but trees and fog. Then I saw a figure standing on the road behind me. A man's silhouette this time, broad-shouldered, wearing a ranger's uniform just like mine. For an instant, I thought it was Mason. "Sir?" I called. The figure lifted a hand in greeting, but something about the motion was jerky, like a puppet learning to wave. I took a cautious step forward, squinting into the dark. "Mason?" That you?" The shape tilted its head in a way Mason never would. Too far, too slow, like its neck didn't have bones. Then it smiled. The face that caught my flashlight wasn't Mason's at all. The skin looked stretched, the features almost human but not arranged quite right. The eyes were wide and glassy, and the mouth was too large, the teeth too white, too even. It began walking toward me, each step deliberate, heavy. I raised my radio, fumbling for the emergency signal. "Base, there's someone impersonating a ranger out here." Before I could finish, a hand clamped down on my shoulder from behind. I nearly swung the flashlight like a weapon, but a voice hissed, "Easy, kid." I turned and saw the real Mason, his face pale under the beam, eyes hard and alert. He was breathing heavily, a pistol drawn in his right hand. "Stay quiet," he whispered. "We're leaving, now." I started to protest, but he grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the tree line. Behind us, the thing wearing a ranger's face took another step forward, the sound of its hooves, clicking against gravel. Once we were deep enough in the woods, Mason crouched behind a fallen log, pulling me down beside him. "Don't look," he said. "It'll come close. It'll try to get your attention. Don't give it what it wants." "What is it?" I whispered. He didn't answer. He just reached into his jacket and pulled out a small metal disc, an old compass. The needle spun wildly, circling without rest. "Magnetic field shot to hell," he muttered. "Means it's close." From the road, we heard it move. Slow, dragging steps, each one deliberate. Then it spoke again, louder this time, mimicking Mason's own voice perfectly. "Ethan, it's safe now. Come out." The imitation was flawless. If Mason hadn't been sitting right beside me, I might have believed it. He leaned close, whispering, "It learns fast. It studies your patterns. Don't ever answer." The voice called again, exactly the same tone, same rhythm. "Ethan, come out." I gripped the radio so tightly my knuckles ached. The air felt heavy, charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, the forest went silent again. Mason waited another full minute before standing. "It's gone," he said. "For now." I looked at him, trying to steady my breathing. "What the hell was that thing?" He holstered his weapon slowly, eyes scanning the trees. "Something that wears familiarity like a mask." "You saw its face. You understand now why we stay quiet." I nodded, though my mind was still racing. As we made our way back to the station, the fog thinned, and the first hint of dawn painted the horizon gray. Mason didn't speak again until the building came into view. "You did well," he said finally. "You didn't look too long. That's what saves you." I wanted to believe him, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I'd seen things before. Wildlife attacks, lost hikers, broken bodies, but nothing had ever looked back at me like that creature did. Nothing had ever learned me. Inside the station, Mason locked the door and poured 2 shots of something amber from a flask. "To your first night," he said, "and to the rules that keep us breathing." I took the drink, my throat burning as it went down. "You knew it was out there, didn't you?" Mason's eyes met mine, dark and unblinking. "I always know. The forest tells me." He turned toward the window where the dawn was slowly breaking through the fog. "It's not the first time I've seen one. And it won't be the last." For a long time after we stepped back into the ranger station, neither of us spoke. The silence hung heavy. Not the easy kind that comes with exhaustion, but the brittle quiet of 2 men trying to convince themselves they'd imagined what they'd seen. Mason moved with the calm of habit, locking doors, checking radio frequencies, writing brief notes in the logbook. The kind of motions that keep the mind busy so it doesn't have to think too hard. I sat at the desk, staring at the half-empty coffee mug I'd left earlier. The liquid had gone cold, a thin film of oil floating on top. A tiny, absurd detail that reminded me of how normal the night had started. Mason finally broke the silence. "You still think I was telling campfire stories?" I shook my head. "I don't know what I saw, but it wasn't human, and it sure as hell wasn't a deer." He nodded once as if he'd expected that answer. "They call it the not deer because calling it by what it isn't is the only safe way to describe it. Give something like that a name, you give it a way in. That thing, it looked like you. It used your voice." Mason leaned against the window frame, arms crossed. "That's one of their tricks. They learn you through the forest. The way you move, the sound of your breath, every word you've spoken out there. The forest is its archive, Cole. You walk these woods long enough, and they know you better than you know yourself." I let that settle. Outside, the light was changing from gray to gold as the first rays of the sun filtered through the trees. The fog was burning off slowly, revealing the trailhead just beyond the station. It looked ordinary again, harmless. "Why not tell people?" I asked quietly. "Campers, hikers, anyone who comes through here should know." Mason's laugh was short, without humor. "You ever try explaining to a tourist that a forest can mimic their dead brother's voice? They'd call the sheriff, maybe the newspapers. Then we'd have reporters, thrill seekers, teenagers coming here for a dare. This park would turn into a feeding ground." I couldn't argue with that logic, but something in it chilled me even more than the creatures themselves. "So we just pretend nothing's wrong?" "We don't pretend," Mason said. "We manage, we watch, we contain what we can, and we keep the rest quiet. The world doesn't need to know every truth that walks under the trees." He went back to writing in the logbook, his pen scratching across the page. I got up, walked to the window, and looked out again. The forest was beautiful in the early light, innocent even. It was hard to believe that just hours ago something inside it had watched me, studied me, spoken with my own name on its borrowed tongue. I turned to Mason. "What happens if someone doesn't follow your rules?" His hand paused over the paper. When he looked up, there was a tiredness in his eyes that wasn't just lack of sleep. "They disappear," he said simply. "Sometimes we find their gear, sometimes we find nothing at all. The forest keeps what it wants." I sat back down, the chair creaking beneath me. My heart had finally slowed, but my mind was still running. I kept hearing that whisper, my name, stretched and hollow, echoing in the dark. Mason tore the page from his notebook and handed it to me. It was a list written in neat, blocky letters. Unwritten protocols, Shenandoah District 1. Never answer a voice calling your name unless you see the mouth it comes from. 2. If you find something that looks placed, don't move it, don't photograph it, leave it as it is. 3. When the forest goes silent, stop walking. 4. If you see a deer that looks wrong, walk away and don't look back. 5. If you forget any of these rules, pray the forest forgets you first. I read the list twice, my stomach knotting tighter each time. "This is what you live by?" "It's what keeps me alive." He folded his arms, his voice quieter now. "The Park Service doesn't know about these rules. They'd fire me if they did, but they're the reason I've made it through 30 years out here." 30 years. That number hit me harder than I expected. How many nights had he survived by staying silent, pretending he hadn't seen what walked just beyond the trees? How many rangers before me hadn't been so lucky? I asked. "How did you start noticing them?" Mason exhaled, a long, slow sound. "First year I was here. Back then, I thought like you do. Protocols, wildlife, logic. Then one night I was tracking a missing hiker. Found her pack at the base of an oak tree, clothes folded, food untouched. Thought she might have wandered off disoriented. Then I heard her singing. Clear as day, maybe 50 yards ahead. So I followed the voice." He paused, looking past me as if the memory were projected against the wall. When I caught up, it wasn't her. Just something standing there, wearing her jacket, humming with a mouth that didn't move right. I turned and ran. Been running ever since, one way or another. We sat in silence after that. The radio crackled occasionally, just background noise now. Outside, birds began to sing again, the first normal sound in hours. I looked down at the folded paper in my hand, those 5 rules written in black ink. I wanted to laugh at them, to push them away as superstition. But the image of that twisted face, that wrong smile, kept my throat dry. Mason finally shut the logbook and stood. "Get some rest. You'll be on the day shift for a week while you adjust. Night patrol's not for everyone." "I'm not quitting," I said. "I didn't say you were." He studied me for a moment, the corner of his mouth twitching upward, maybe approval, maybe pity. "Just remember what I told you. Curiosity gets you marked." He walked toward the back office, leaving me alone in the hum of the station. I stared at the door he'd gone through, then back at the forest outside. The sunlight was full now, spreading across the trees like a clean slate. But even in daylight, the shadows looked deeper than they should have. I picked up the radio, turned the volume down low, and tested the frequency. Static, soft, and even. Then, faintly, a voice threaded through it, one that wasn't Mason's. "Ethan." It was so quiet I almost thought I'd imagined it. The same whisper, the same gentle rhythm. I froze, hand hovering over the dial. The rule came back to me immediately. Never answer unless you see the mouth it comes from. The whisper came again, slightly clearer this time, closer. I shut the radio off. Outside, a gust of wind stirred the trees. For just a second, the forest seemed to sigh, content, almost amused. I told myself it was nothing, just an echo, interference, leftover fear. But as I turned toward the station wall, I saw something through the window. Out by the trailhead, half hidden by the brush, stood a deer. Or at least it wore the shape of one. Its neck was too long, its body too thin, and even from that distance I could tell it wasn't grazing. It was watching the building, watching me. I blinked, and it was gone. The forest was quiet again. I sat down slowly, Mason's rules still in my hand. I read them once more, tracing the letters with my thumb. Then I folded the page and slid it into my uniform pocket. The radio stayed off. For the first time, I understood what Mason meant when he said silence was survival. And I knew this was only the beginning. I didn't sleep much after that first night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the forest breathing. Not the steady rhythm of wind through branches, but a slow, deliberate sound, like lungs that weren't supposed to exist. Morning light should have brought relief, but it didn't. The fog still lingered low across the valley, and the trees swayed with a patience that felt unnatural. Mason's rules stayed folded in my pocket, soft from being read and reread until the paper wore thin. For 3 days, nothing happened. No whispers, no shapes in the mist. I started to think maybe it had been a hallucination brought on by exhaustion. My rational mind needed that explanation. But the forest never gives you peace for free. On the 4th night, Mason handed me new patrol orders. "Skyline Drive," he said, sliding the sheet across the desk. "Section between mile marker 37 and 42. Quiet stretch, mostly scenic pull-offs. Stay on the asphalt. Do not stop unless it's an emergency." "Something going on?" I asked. His eyes flicked toward the window before he answered. "There have been reports of a woman walking the roadside after dark. Drivers say she waves them down, says her husband's missing. By the time rangers get there, she's gone." I tried to smile. Probably just a lost camper. "Then why does she only show up at night?" he asked. "And why does every witness describe her wearing clean clothes, barefoot and smiling?" He handed me a folded photograph. blurry, taken from a dash cam. A figure standing on the shoulder of the road, waving. Even through the distortion, something about her posture was wrong. Her elbow bent too far backward, her smile too wide. Mason tapped the photo. You see her, you don't stop. You don't talk. You report and move on. Understood? Understood. He studied me for a moment longer, then said quietly, She's not what she looks like, Cole. None of them are. I nodded, though part of me still resisted believing. A woman in distress, that was something I could understand, something I could help. By sunset, I was back on patrol. The road wound like a ribbon through the Blue Ridge, flanked by steep drop-offs and thick walls of forest. My truck's headlights carved tunnels of light through the dark. The air was cold, heavy with the scent of wet leaves and asphalt. The first hour was uneventful. Deer sometimes froze in the light before darting off, but none looked wrong. I radioed in at my checkpoint, my voice sounding too loud against the static. Skyline Patrol, mile marker 38, all clear. Laura Kim, the dispatcher back at headquarters, answered. Copy that, Ranger Cole. Fog's expected to roll in soon, so watch visibility. You good out there? Yeah, I lied. Quiet night. Her voice carried warmth even through the static. Quiet's not always bad, Ethan. You sound like you could use it. I almost smiled. I'll take quiet any day. But quiet wasn't what I got. It was near midnight when I saw her. The fog had thickened, wrapping the world in soft gray walls. My headlights barely reached 20 feet ahead when a figure appeared in the beam. A woman standing on the shoulder, waving both arms. My hands tightened on the wheel. She matched Mason's description perfectly. Jeans, a light jacket, shoulder-length hair that caught the light just so. Her face, though her face was what made my stomach twist. She was smiling, but her eyes didn't move with the smile. They stayed wide, unblinking. I slowed automatically. Instinct, training, years of search and rescue had conditioned me to respond. But Mason's words rang in my mind. Don't stop, don't talk, don't acknowledge. I hesitated only a second. Long enough. The woman stepped closer, waving frantically now, mouth opening as if shouting something I couldn't hear through the glass. I cracked the window just an inch. Ma'am, I called, trying to keep my tone calm. Are you injured? Her head snapped toward the sound, too fast. The motion made the muscles in her neck ripple in a way that wasn't human. Thank God, she said, her voice bright, breathless. I've been walking for hours. My husband, he's missing. He was camping near Dark Hollow Falls. I swallowed. That area's closed after sundown. I know, she said quickly. But he went out there 3 days ago. I can't find him. The fog swirled thicker around her legs, but the ground beneath her feet stayed perfectly dry. Not a single speck of mud or dirt clung to her jeans. I should have left then. I should have driven away and called Mason. But something in her tone, the tremor of worry, the exhaustion, it hooked into the part of me that still believed my job was to help people. Get in, I said before I could stop myself. I'll take you to the ranger station. Her expression softened into relief. Too much relief. Thank you, she whispered. She opened the passenger door and slid in with smooth, deliberate movements. The air inside the cab turned colder as she buckled her seatbelt. I noticed her hands, clean, pale, nails perfect, not a scratch. Where exactly was your husband camping? I asked, forcing my voice to sound casual. Crystal Lake, she said, about 15 miles west. I frowned. There's no Crystal Lake in Shenandoah. Her smile didn't fade. There used to be. The radio hissed suddenly, a burst of static loud enough to make me flinch. Then Mason's voice cut through, urgent and raw. Cole, where are you right now? Report. I grabbed the mic. On Skyline near 39, picked up a civilian. Get her out of your truck, Mason interrupted. Now. I turned, staring at the woman. She sat perfectly still, smiling faintly at the windshield, as if she hadn't heard him. "Did you hear me?" Mason's voice roared through the radio. "Cole, she's not—" The line went dead. The woman turned her head slowly toward me. Her eyes caught the reflection of the dash light, and for just a second, they looked like glass. Smooth, depthless, reflecting not me but the road behind us. "Your friend sounds upset," she said softly. My throat went dry. "He's protective." "That's good," she said, almost to herself. "You'll need protection out here." She looked back toward the window, humming something under her breath. The tune was soft, lilting, almost pretty, but it wasn't human. The rhythm was wrong, like a lullaby that didn't understand melody, only imitation. The forest outside seemed to listen. The hum she made was quiet at first, a murmur under the engine's steady growl. But the longer she kept it up, the less it sounded like humming and more like copying. Each rise and fall of the note echoed the rhythm of my breath. Every time I exhaled, she matched it almost perfectly. I turned down the radio volume. The silence that filled the truck didn't feel natural. Even the engine seemed muted, swallowed by the fog pressing against the windows. "What's your name?" I asked. "Anna," she said instantly. No pause, no hesitation, as though she'd rehearsed the answer. "Anna Whitmore." I nodded, keeping my eyes on the road. "You said your husband was camping near Crystal Lake." "Yes," she said. 3 days ago." Her tone was flat now, calm, practiced. It wasn't the voice of a woman terrified for her missing husband. I risked a glance at her reflection in the windshield. She wasn't looking at me. She wasn't looking at anything. Her eyes were fixed straight ahead, wide open, unblinking. A chill spread across my back. "There's no lake by that name," I said. "You sure you're remembering correctly?" That's when she smiled. "There used to be." I slowed the truck, scanning the road ahead for a turnoff. The fog made everything look the same. Gray walls, the faint outline of trees, the suggestion of movement that might have been branches or something else. "Used to be?" I asked. She turned to face me, and in the faint light from the dashboard, I saw it, her pupils contracting, then stretching, like something behind them was testing how eyes were supposed to work. "Before the forest took it back," she said softly. "It still remembers the name." Her voice dropped, almost a whisper. "It remembers everyone's name." I didn't realize how tightly I was gripping the steering wheel until the rubber groaned under my hands. "What's that supposed to mean?" But she didn't answer. She just started humming again, the same broken lullaby. I pressed harder on the gas. The sooner we reached the ranger station, the better. The road wound upward, cutting through switchbacks along the ridge. My headlights bounced against the trees, flashing over signs that didn't look right. One read, "Mile marker 41." The next one said 37 again, then 39. I frowned. I hadn't turned around. The road should have been moving forward. Anna was still smiling. "You're going in circles." "I'm staying on Skyline," I said sharply. She tilted her head. "Are you?" I checked the GPS on my dashboard. It flickered, coordinates shifting every few seconds. The map spun once, then froze on a blank green screen. Mason's rules came back in a rush. If the forest starts to shift, stop. The geography isn't yours anymore. I eased my foot off the accelerator, coasting to a slow stop near a pull-off. The fog pressed thicker now, making the world outside look like a white ocean. Anna turned toward me, her movements smooth, too fluid. "Why did you stop?" "I just need to check something." I reached for the radio mic, but she moved faster than I expected, her hand gripping my wrist before I could press the button. Her skin was ice cold. "You don't need to do that," she said, still smiling. I stared at her hand, small, delicate, but the grip was strong enough to hurt. "You're freezing." Her head tilted again. I don't feel temperature anymore. That single word, anymore, made my stomach turn. I yanked my hand free and hit the radio switch. Base, this is Cole. I'm with a civilian near marker 39. But the roads... Static exploded through the speakers, followed by a faint, warped version of Mason's voice. Leave. The truck. Now. Say again, Base. Leave. The voice broke apart like a record slowing down. I heard something breathing through the frequency, too close to the mic to be static. I turned the radio off. When I looked back at Anna, she was staring directly at me, that same calm smile fixed on her face. He's right, she said. You should go. I tried to keep my voice steady. Go where? She leaned closer, and I caught the faintest scent of something wrong. Damp soil, old iron, and something sweet like decaying flowers. Back where you started, she whispered. But you can't, can you? The road's not real anymore. Her tone was almost sympathetic, like she pitied me. I shoved the truck into gear. Stay in your seat, she laughed softly. I'm not stopping you, Ranger. I pressed the pedal. The truck surged forward, the fog parting just enough to reveal the asphalt ahead. For the next few miles, neither of us spoke. I focused on the white lines, counting each one as if the rhythm could keep me sane. When I finally glanced toward her, she was looking out the passenger window, one hand tracing the glass. It's beautiful here, she said quietly. Peaceful. You can't hear them when it's this thick. Hear who? I asked. She didn't answer. We rounded another bend, and the headlights caught something on the shoulder. A single brown leather shoe, neatly placed facing the road. My pulse spiked. Mason had mentioned objects that looked placed. Anna leaned forward slightly, her voice soft. Stop. That's mine. I gripped the wheel tighter. You said you've been walking for hours. How's it that clean? Her head turned slowly toward me, and this time her smile didn't look human at all. The corners of her mouth stretched too far, skin pulling at the edges. It's clean, she said, because I just put it there. I slammed the brakes. The truck skidded to a halt, tires squealing on the wet pavement. When I looked at the passenger seat, she was gone. The door hadn't opened. No sound, no movement, just gone. My breath fogged the windshield as I stared at the empty seat. Outside, the fog pulsed like a living thing. Then came the knock, 3 soft taps on the driver's side window. I turned my head slowly. Anna stood outside, smiling through the glass. Her face was wrong again, flat, pale, her eyes reflecting the light like an animal's. She lifted her bare foot and pressed it against the door. No dirt, no cuts, no marks. Then she whispered something that fogged the glass in perfect letters. You're marked now. I floored the accelerator. The truck roared forward, engine screaming as I tore through the fog. I didn't stop until I saw the faint glow of the ranger station lights through the trees. Only when I reached the parking lot did I realize my hands were bleeding. The steering wheel's rubber had cut into my palms from how hard I'd been holding it. I looked back down the road. Nothing but darkness, but the passenger seat beside me smelled faintly of damp earth and something sweet. Mason was already standing outside when I pulled into the gravel lot. He must have been listening for the engine because before I'd even cut the headlights, he was at my door, face pale and tight. Out of the truck, he said. No greeting, no questions, just that low, clipped order. I stepped out, my body trembling despite the cold air slicing across my skin. Mason's flashlight beam swept through the cab, the empty passenger seat, the faint film of fog still clinging to the windows. She was right there, I said, my voice breaking. 1 second she was in the truck, then gone, vanished. Mason didn't look at me. He moved to the passenger side, running his light along the door and seat, searching for something. When he finally spoke, His tone was flat. "Did she touch you?" The question threw me. "What? Did she touch you?" I swallowed. "Yeah, grabbed my wrist. Why?" He muttered something under his breath, too low for me to catch, then turned toward me, eyes fierce. "Where's your glove?" I looked down. The glove from my right hand was missing. I hadn't even realized it. My skin tingled, a faint burning sensation traveling up my forearm. Mason stepped back, jaw tight. "Stay right there." He walked to the utility shed, returning with a canister of something I didn't recognize and a metal tongs like the kind used for handling live coals. He took my bare hand in a gloved grip and turned it over. There, across the palm, was a faint pattern, lines so thin they looked like veins, but too precise. They shimmered slightly in the flashlight beam. "Burn," he said. "What?" "Now, before it spreads." He poured a clear liquid from the canister over my hand. It stung, cold first, then hot, an icy fire racing through every nerve. I hissed in pain, jerking instinctively, but he held me steady. "Keep still. It's only temporary." "What the hell is this?" I gasped. "Ethan, you made contact. It marked you. You think it just disappears when it's done? That's not how this works." The burning faded, replaced by a dull ache. When I looked again, the faint lines were gone. Only a red welt remained. Mason screwed the cap back on the canister and tossed the tongs aside. "Congratulations," he said. "You just gave it your scent." I stared at him, struggling to breathe. "What does that even mean?" "It means it knows you now. It can find you anywhere in this forest. That mark was a bridge, a way for it to track you, maybe even use you." He rubbed a hand over his face, the gesture weary, frustrated. "You broke every rule I gave you." "I was trying to help her," I said. "She said her husband—" "She doesn't have a husband." Mason's voice cut like a blade. "That story's bait. They all have one. A lost hiker, a missing kid, someone who needs your help. That's how they get you to open the door." I opened my mouth to argue, but the words died before I could speak. Deep down, I already knew he was right. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I've seen a dozen rangers make the same mistake. Not all of them come back." I wanted to tell him it wasn't my fault, that any decent person would have stopped. But the look in his eyes stopped me cold. There was no anger there, only grief. He turned away, scanning the road that wound into the trees. The fog had thinned, leaving only faint wisps curling around the ditch. "Stay here," he said finally. "I need to check something." Before I could protest, he grabbed his radio and a flashlight, heading down the road in the direction I'd come from. His figure disappeared quickly into the dark, leaving me alone with the hum of the cooling engine. I sat on the truck's tailgate, staring at the gravel under my boots. The smell inside the cab still clung to my clothes, wet soil and sweetness, faint but unmistakable. After a few minutes, the static on my radio hissed to life. Mason's voice came through, low and tense. "Found it, half a mile down." "Found what?" There was a pause. Then, "A shoe. Women's brown leather. Same as you described." My blood went cold. "Don't touch it." "I won't," he said, already bagging it with the tongs. The line crackled again before he added, "There's something else, Ethan. You didn't tell me she used your name." I froze. "How do you know that?" His voice hardened. "Because she said it again when I found the shoe." The static swallowed his last word. "Mason, say again." Nothing. Just that steady, whispering noise. I climbed back into the truck, grabbed my flashlight, and started down the road toward where he'd gone. Every step echoed too loud in the still air. When I rounded a bend, I saw his flashlight beam up ahead, motionless, pointing at the ground. "Mason!" I called. No answer. As I approached, the beam shifted suddenly, like someone had picked it up. Then I heard his voice. faint and wrong. "Ethan, it's fine, come here." The tone was off. Too smooth, too calm. Mason never sounded calm. I stopped cold, pulse thundering. The beam turned toward me, cutting through the fog. He was standing there, the real Mason, or what looked like him. Same uniform, same stance, even the same flashlight. But his smile was wrong. It was the exact smile Anna had worn. My hand went instinctively to my radio. "Mason, if that's you, answer your call sign." The figure tilted its head. "You don't need that, Ethan. Come on, we're safe now." I took a step back, raising the flashlight in defense. Then another voice came through the static on my radio, rough, hoarse, terrified. "Don't listen. That's not me." My heart leapt. The real Mason was somewhere else. The fake one took another step forward. I caught a glimpse of its legs in the beam, bare, too long, bending at wrong angles. I turned and ran. Branches whipped my face as I sprinted back toward the station. The voice behind me shifted tones, switching between Mason's, Anna's, and even my own. "Ethan, stop! Ethan, please! Ethan, come back!" Each one was perfect. Each one hurt to hear. When the station lights finally came into view, I nearly collapsed from relief. Mason was there, the real one this time, kneeling beside a sealed evidence bag. Inside was a single shoe. He looked up as I stumbled in. "I told you not to leave the station." "You were out there," I shouted. "I heard you calling me." "That wasn't me," he said. "You answered, didn't you?" I didn't have the strength to lie. "Yeah." He exhaled heavily, staring at the ground. "Then it knows your voice now, too." He sealed the evidence bag with a click, his expression hardening. "You brought it closer, Ethan. This isn't over, not even close." Inside the station, the air felt wrong. Too still, too heavy. The kind of silence that presses against your chest and waits for you to break it first. Mason sealed the evidence bag and placed it carefully inside a metal lockbox beneath his desk. His movements were deliberate, ritualistic, as if he'd done this 100 times before. I stood near the window, my reflection faint in the glass. The forest outside was still cloaked in fog. Somewhere beyond those trees, something that wore my voice was waiting. Mason finally turned toward me. "You broke 2 rules tonight," he said. "You stopped, and you answered." I started to speak, but he held up a hand. "I'm not saying this to punish you. I'm saying it so you understand what's coming." I sank into a chair, exhausted. "What's coming?" He walked to the window, pulling the blinds halfway down. "They don't just vanish when the sun comes up. Once you acknowledge one, it remembers you. You've seen it, heard it, and now it's marked you. That connection doesn't fade." "So what do I do?" Mason hesitated, staring into the trees. "You learn to live with it, or you leave before it decides you're worth keeping." That last word, keeping, hung in the air. "I don't understand," I said. He leaned against the counter, rubbing a hand over his jaw. "There's a reason these things mimic people, Ethan. They don't just copy what we look like. They test what makes us human. Compassion, curiosity, recognition. Every time one of us stops to help, it learns a little more about us, about what works." "You're saying they're learning?" "They've been learning for decades." He opened a drawer and pulled out an old file, yellowed around the edges. Inside were grainy photographs, shapes half hidden in fog, footprints that looked almost human but not quite. Back in the 70s, before they called them not deer, rangers reported echo sightings, people who looked exactly like missing hikers, wandering the trails days after they vanished. Always barefoot, always smiling, and always asking for help. I flipped through the photos, my hands trembling. One of them showed 2 figures standing side by side, identical down to the clothes. One of them had no eyes. Mason continued. The Park Service buried these reports, said they were hoaxes, misidentifications, but the pattern never stopped. Every few years, another ranger disappears, and someone new shows up claiming to be them. Sometimes they even know things they shouldn't. Radio codes, patrol routes, family names. I looked up from the folder. "You've seen one." He nodded once. 3 years ago, looked like my partner Darius. Same voice, same jokes. He'd gone missing 2 nights earlier after responding to a distress call near Hawksbill. When he showed up at my door, I almost let him in. "What stopped you?" He called me Mike. Mason's mouth twitched into a humorless smile. "My name's Mark." A chill crawled up my spine. "What happened to it?" "I don't know." I shut the door. When I looked again, it was gone. The radio on his desk crackled to life then. A burst of static followed by a faint, distorted voice. "Ranger Cole, this is dispatch. Respond." I snatched up the receiver, relief flooding through me. "Dispatch, this is Cole. I read you." The voice came again, clearer now. "We've been trying to reach you for over an hour. You and Mason dropped off radar. Everything okay?" I looked at him, unsure what to say. He gave a slight nod. "Tell her you're fine," he murmured. "Keep it normal." "Yeah?" I said into the mic. "Just some signal interference on Skyline. We're back at the station now." "Copy that," Laura said. "Oh, and Ethan, you didn't happen to see anyone on the road tonight, did you? We got a report from a driver about a woman near mile 40. Mason's eyes met mine. He shook his head slowly. "Negative," I said. "Didn't see anyone." "All right, stay safe out there. Dispatch out." The radio clicked silent. I exhaled shakily. "She's still out there." "She always is," Mason said. "They don't die, they just change faces." I pressed my palms against my knees, trying to ground myself. "So that's it? We just pretend nothing happened?" He crouched beside the lockbox and turned the key, his voice low. "We don't pretend, Ethan. We contain what we can, and we survive what we can't." The clock on the wall ticked toward dawn. The first light of morning began to bleed through the blinds. Outside, the fog was lifting again, revealing the trees in pale gold. For a moment, the forest looked normal, peaceful, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching us. Mason straightened, brushing dust off his uniform. "You should get some sleep. You'll need it." "What about you?" He gave a tired smile. "Sleep's for people who don't know what's in those woods." He walked out of the room, leaving me alone with the quiet hum of the station's heater. I sat there for a long time, staring at the fog thinning beyond the window. Then, just as the sun crested the ridge, I saw movement near the tree line. At first I thought it was a deer. The shape was right. Slender legs, graceful neck. But when it turned its head, I saw its eyes catch the light. Not the dull reflection of an animal, but the bright, deliberate glint of something aware. It stared at the station for a long moment before stepping back into the trees, vanishing without a sound. My radio buzzed softly on the desk. "Ethan," it was my voice, not recorded, not playback, speaking live. "You shouldn't have left her." The words were slow, dragging, like someone stretching sound through their teeth. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Outside, the wind moved through the trees. But it wasn't just wind anymore. It carried something like laughter, the kind that knows your name. 2 days passed after the Skyline Drive incident, but it didn't feel like 2. The nights blurred together, full of static and half-heard voices in the trees. Mason insisted on shorter patrols, until things cooled down, but the truth was clear. He was watching me, watching for signs that the mark hadn't faded. I couldn't blame him. I still caught myself glancing at my wrist sometimes, expecting to see those faint, glowing veins return. I could feel something under the skin, not pain exactly, more like the buzz of an electrical wire you can't see. The forest around Shenandoah had changed too. It looked the same on the surface, pine and oak rising from mist, the smell of earth and rain. But the silence between its sounds had deepened. It was like a breathing thing holding itself still, waiting. On the third night, Mason gave me a new assignment. "The fire tower at Turk Mountain," he said, sliding the map toward me. "Ranger Alvarez was supposed to check in from there this morning, never did." I frowned. "You think it's related?" "I think the forest doesn't like when we start noticing patterns." That was Mason's way of saying yes. The Turk Mountain Fire Tower sat on the western ridge, 10 miles of switchbacks away. It hadn't been used for full-time surveillance in decades, but we still rotated through for weather readings and radio testing. A perfect place for something or someone to vanish quietly. "I'll go," I said. Mason studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Take the backup radio. Stay on open frequency. And Ethan, if you hear your name, don't answer, even if it's my voice." I left before sunset. The trail up Turk Mountain was narrow, winding through old-growth forest that smelled of wet bark and moss. The fog was thicker here, clinging low like it refused to rise. Every step crunched against the gravel path, the sound unnaturally loud in the stillness. Halfway up, I started hearing the wind whispering through the treetops, a slow, rhythmic murmur that almost sounded like words. It reminded me of the way radio static sometimes formed phrases if you listened too long. I turned my radio on just to break the silence. "Base, this is Cole, en route to Turk Tower, half a mile out." Mason's voice came through, faint but steady. "Copy that. Keep an eye out for Alvarez's Jeep near the trailhead." "Nothing yet," I said. "Then stay sharp. That tower's got history." "Meaning?" He hesitated. "Rangers used to report hearing their own voices, echoing back through the comm line up there, like the mountain was repeating them." I forced a dry laugh. "That's supposed to be comforting?" "Not in the least." The line went dead. I reached the tower just before dark. The old structure rose above the trees like a skeleton of rusted steel and weathered wood. Its windows were dark, the door hanging slightly open. Alvarez's Jeep sat nearby, engine cold, keys still in the ignition. "Base, I've got the vehicle," I said into the radio. "No sign of Alvarez yet." Static answered. No Mason this time. I clicked the light on my shoulder and climbed the tower's metal stairs, each step groaning beneath my weight. The wind picked up as I ascended, carrying a faint whistle that threaded through the beams like a song half remembered. When I reached the top, the observation deck was empty. Alvarez's field notebook sat open on the desk, its pages fluttering in the wind. The last entry was a single line written in hurried scrawl. "Something's calling from below the ridge. Sounds like me." The words chilled me more than the air. I leaned out over the railing, scanning the forest below. The fog moved in slow currents curling between the trees. For a second, I thought I saw movement, a figure standing among the pines, head tilted up toward the tower. I blinked, and it was gone. Then the radio hissed. "Ethan!" The voice was soft, nearly lost in static, but it was my voice. I froze. The sound came not from my radio speaker, but from the small receiver on the desk. It was old, analog, the kind that picked up open band frequencies. "Ethan," the voice said again, "come down. It's safe now." I backed away from the desk. My heart was hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. The voice came again, clearer this time. "You're tired, aren't you? You've done enough." I turned off my radio. The voice didn't stop. It was coming through the metal of the tower itself, vibrating faintly through the floorboards, like the structure was speaking. "Ethan, come down." The wind gusted, slamming the door below. The sound echoed up the stairs like footsteps. I grabbed the notebook, stuffed it into my jacket, and started down. Every instinct screamed that I shouldn't turn my back, but I couldn't stay up there either. Halfway down the stairs, I heard it again. Footsteps, this time on the level above me. Slow, deliberate. "Alvarez?" I called before I could stop myself. No answer, just another step. Then, faintly, "Ethan?" It wasn't my voice this time, it was Mason's, but Mason was 10 miles away. "Ethan, it's okay, you can come back up." I froze. The wind died. The forest went utterly silent. The only sound left was that voice echoing down the metal stairs. I raised my flashlight and aimed it upward. For a moment I saw nothing, just rust, fog, the frame of the tower. Then, leaning over the railing, a face appeared. It looked exactly like Mason, but its smile was too wide. For a second, I couldn't move. The face above me was so familiar, creases around the eyes, the same salt and pepper beard, the steady calm of someone who'd seen too much. If I hadn't known Mason was miles away, I might have believed it. The figure leaned over the railing, grinning. "You shouldn't have come here alone, Ethan." Its tone was perfect, almost gentle, but there was something underneath it, a rhythm that didn't belong to speech. It sounded like breathing stretched into words. My flashlight trembled in my hand. "You're not him," I said. The grin didn't change. "Then who am I?" The thing's voice rippled, shifting between pitches, almost testing what human conversation felt like. Then, as if remembering its line, it said, "He told you not to come up here. You never listen." I took another step down. The stairs groaned. The copy tilted its head, watching me like a bird studying movement. "Why are you leaving? You came all this way." "I came for Alvarez," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. "Where is he?" That smile faltered, then reformed too quickly. "Gone," it said. "He's part of the tower now." "What do you mean?" The metal beneath my boots vibrated, not shaking, vibrating like a deep hum rising through the bones of the structure. The whole tower began to resonate with a low, impossible sound that I could feel in my chest. The voice above me changed, splitting, multiplying, Mason's voice my own, Alvarez's, overlapping in a chorus of whispers. "Stay. Listen. Stay." I clamped my hands over my ears, but the sound wasn't coming from outside. It was inside the steel, inside me. I stumbled down the last flight, nearly missing a step, and burst out through the tower door into the fog. The sound followed, faint but constant, vibrating in my teeth. When I turned back, the top platform was empty. The face, whatever it was, had vanished. But the tower was still humming. A steady, metallic drone that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of a heartbeat. "Base," I said into the radio, my voice hoarse. "This is Cole. I need backup at Turk Tower. There's something wrong here." Static. "Base, come in." More static. Then, faintly, Mason's voice cut through. "Ethan, you're hearing the echo. Get off that mountain now." "What is it?" I demanded. "The tower's compromised. It's not just a mimic, it's resonance. Those things learn voices, Ethan. But that mountain, it learns memory." The words didn't make sense. "What are you talking about?" He hesitated, and for the first time since I'd known him, Mason sounded afraid. "We used to think the not deer and the mimics were isolated, separate entities, but we were wrong. They're part of something bigger, something that uses the landscape itself. Uses it how? To remember us." The radio crackled violently, and Mason's voice broke into fragments. "Leave. Don't let it inside your head." Then silence. The humming from the tower deepened, shifting from a low rumble to a rhythmic pulse. The ground beneath me vibrated faintly. I turned and realized the fog had begun moving. Not drifting, but flowing, streaming down from the top of the mountain like a living current. Shapes formed within it, bodies, faces, outlines that shimmered in and out of view. Alvarez's, Mason's, mine. Each time the fog shifted, I saw a reflection of someone I recognized. I stumbled back toward the Jeep, my flashlight beam shaking wildly. The key was still in the ignition. I turned it, praying the engine would start. It didn't. The fog reached the edge of the lot and stopped, like an animal sniffing the air. For a second, nothing happened. Then the radio in the Jeep came alive. "Ethan," said my voice. My stomach turned to ice. "You're tired," it said again, mimicking the tone I used when talking to Mason earlier that week. "You've done enough." I slammed my fist on the radio, but the sound didn't stop. It echoed through the air, through the glass, through the ground itself. "Come back," the chorus of voices said. "We remember you." I threw open the door and ran. The trail down the mountain was narrow and slick, branches whipping against my arms. The humming followed me all the way down, soft, steady, alive. By the time I reached the bottom, dawn was bleeding into the fog. The first streaks of light hit the treetops, but the forest didn't look brighter. It looked watchful. My radio clicked again. "Ethan," Mason said, his real voice this time, shaky, desperate. "Talk to me. Are you clear?" I collapsed against a tree, catching my breath. "I'm off the mountain, but the tower, it's alive. I know," he said. "We lost contact with that place years ago for a reason. I never should have sent you there." "Then why did you?" He hesitated. "Because it called for you." That stopped me cold. "What do you mean, called for me?" "You're marked," he said quietly. "The echo doesn't pick random people. It chooses those who've already been touched." "So what? This thing's following me now." "No, it's remembering you." He exhaled sharply, the sound of someone deciding how much truth to share. "You didn't just hear the echo, Ethan. It heard you. That's what it does. It learns the voices of those who survive the mimics, and then it repeats them, trying to make sense of what we are." "That's impossible." "Everything about this forest is impossible." I looked back up the trail. The tower was barely visible through the fog, but I could still hear the faint hum, like it was breathing. Mason's voice came again, softer this time. "Get back to the station. Don't stop. Don't look back. And for God's sake, don't answer anything that sounds like you." I started walking, every step heavy, my head filled with the low vibration that never seemed to fade. By the time I reached the Jeep, the sun was fully up. The tower had gone quiet. The only sound left was the wind. But even in the daylight, I could swear the air carried my voice, faint, fractured, and whispering from somewhere high above the ridge. "Ethan." By the time I got back to the ranger station, Mason was already packing gear. 2 radios, a flare gun, a metal case labeled signal dampeners, and an old reel-to-reel recorder that looked like it belonged in a museum. "You're going back up there?" I asked, stepping through the door. He didn't look up. "We don't leave equipment or people behind, not even ghosts." I frowned. "Ghosts?" He zipped the duffel shut. "That's what the scientists used to call them, echo imprints, residual acoustic patterns. They thought the towers amplified certain frequencies, causing auditory hallucinations." He glanced at me, his expression dark. "But hallucinations don't burn through batteries or answer by name." "Mason," I said, lowering my voice, "if that thing is still up there, why go back at all?" He paused, his hand resting on the recorder. "Because Alvarez might still be alive, and if he isn't, I need to know what took him." The silence stretched between us, heavy and deliberate. Outside, a crow called once, sharp and lonely. I should have said no. I should have stayed behind. But something deep in my chest, the same stubborn instinct that made me stop for Anna on Skyline Drive, pushed me forward. "Then you're not going alone?" He met my eyes, studied me for a moment, then nodded once. "Fine, but this time you follow my lead. No talking to voices, no answering radios unless you hear the static burst code first. 3 short, 1 long. Got it? Got it. We set out an hour before dusk. The forest seemed even quieter than before, as if holding its breath. The climb to Turk Mountain felt longer this time, though neither of us said a word. Occasionally, the wind carried fragments of sound, snatches of laughter, faint footsteps, but every time I turned, there was nothing behind us. Halfway up, Mason stopped abruptly, raising a hand. "What is it?" I whispered. He crouched, brushing away a layer of wet leaves. Beneath them was a pattern burned into the dirt, 3 interlocking circles, each about a foot wide. The ground inside them shimmered faintly, like heat rising off asphalt. "Resonance markers," he said. "That's where the frequency bleeds through." I stared at the pattern. "Like a signal?" "More like a wound," Mason said quietly. "Every time someone answers the echo, it leaves one of these behind. The forest remembers the exchange." We moved around it carefully and continued upward. The tower came into view as the last of the daylight faded. It loomed against the horizon, skeletal and silent, but I could already feel the vibration through my boots, the same low hum, barely audible yet steady as a heartbeat. Mason handed me a small headset connected to the reel recorder. "Put this on," he said. "The dampeners will filter out most of the resonance. If the tower starts talking again, we'll record it instead of letting it in." I slipped the headset over my ears. The world became muffled, the hum replaced by a faint, rhythmic thump. Mason flipped the recorder on, its reels spinning slowly as he adjusted the gain. "Remember," he said, "if you hear your own voice, don't respond." We climbed the stairs. The tower creaked beneath our boots. The wind had died completely, leaving only the sound of the recorder's soft whir. When we reached the observation deck, the air felt thicker, heavier, as if gravity itself was stronger here. Alvarez's notebook was still on the desk, fluttering in the faint breeze. Mason flipped through it, scanning the pages, his brow furrowed. These last entries, he wasn't just hearing the echo, he was talking back. He pointed to a line written near the end. "It's learning faster now. Almost got the tone right this time." "Jesus," I whispered. "He was communicating with it." Mason nodded grimly. And it was communicating back. Suddenly the recorder crackled. A low rumble filled our headsets, followed by a faint voice, layered, distorted, like multiple people speaking at once. "Mark, Ethan, stay." I froze. Mason's hand shot up, signaling silence. The voice came again, clearer now, each word separated by static bursts. "Don't leave him." I looked at Mason, his face pale in the dim light. "Alvarez," he called before I could stop him. The voice shifted, deepening. "You left me." That was Alvarez's voice, no question. The exact cadence, the slight Virginia drawl. Mason stepped toward the center of the deck, shouting into the darkness. "Where are you?" The answer came not from the radio, but from the metal beneath our feet. "Here." The floor vibrated violently. The entire tower groaned, bolts creaking, the old beams straining. The hum rose into a howl, a deafening resonance that made the air shimmer. "Mason," I shouted, "stay calm." He dropped to his knees, trying to stabilize the recorder. "It's using the structure as a conduit. Every vibration's a signal." The wood beneath us began to darken, not from moisture but from movement. The grain shifted, swirling like water under glass. Faces formed in the texture, dozens of them. Overlapping, mouths opening and closing without sound. Mason backed away, his voice barely audible over the noise. "It's not just remembering Alvarez, it's rewriting him." The faces blinked in unison and the air went still. Then the tower spoke again. "Ethan." The sound was gentle now, almost sorrowful. "Why did you leave her?" Anna's voice. My chest tightened. I gripped the railing so hard my knuckles went white. That's not her. But my words didn't convince me. Mason turned to me, eyes wide. Don't answer it. She's dead, Mason, whatever she was. It killed her. The voice came again, softer this time. Not dead. Waiting. The recorder began spinning faster, the reels blurring. The signal meter jumped wildly as the voice grew louder, splitting into multiple tones. Anna's, Alvarez's, Mason's, mine, all tangled into one impossible harmony. Then beneath the chaos, a new sound emerged. Footsteps climbing the stairs. Mason grabbed my arm. Time to go. We bolted down the steps 2 at a time. The sound followed, echoing perfectly with ours. 1 step behind, always 1. When we reached the ground, the fog rolled in from the ridge, thicker than before. The tower's hum deepened, resonating through the soil. Don't look back, Mason said, but I did. Through the fog, I saw something descending the stairs inside the tower, a shape that shimmered like heat. Its outline flickered between Alvarez's and mine, switching with each step. The tower's metal frame glowed faintly, pulsing in time with the heartbeat I could feel in my chest. We ran until the forest swallowed the sound. Only when the hum finally faded did Mason stop, gasping for air. We can't go back there, he said. That place isn't a structure anymore. It's alive, and it wants to finish what it started. I nodded, too breathless to speak. The echo of footsteps still played in my head, but the worst part wasn't that they sounded like mine. It was that they'd started matching Mason's, too. We didn't speak the whole way down. The only sound was the crunch of boots and the hiss of fog sliding through the trees like a living thing. By the time we reached the station, the sun was gone, replaced by a sky that looked bruised, purple fading to black, clouds sagging low over the valley. Mason didn't stop at the door. He went straight to the comms room, dropped the recorder on the desk, and started rewinding the tape. The reels clicked softly, the thin magnetic ribbon spinning backward, whispering fragments of sound as it passed through the heads. I stood by the doorway trying to catch my breath. What are you doing? Listening, he said flatly, because that thing up there wasn't just speaking. It was recording every sound we made, every word we said. The machine clicked to a stop. Mason hit play. For a moment all we heard was static, soft, distant, harmless. Then through the hiss, a voice emerged. Mine. Alvarez, where are you? The recording said. My voice from the tower. Then another voice answered. Faint at first, almost identical. Right here. Mason froze. That's the reply from the echo. But as we listened, something else bled through underneath. Layers of voices like a chorus whispering in the background. Some I recognized, Mason, Alvarez, Anna, but others were unfamiliar. Men, women, even children, dozens of them blending into one impossible harmonic frequency. The tape distorted. The lights flickered. For a moment I could swear the walls themselves vibrated. Mason slammed the stop button. That's enough. The room went still, but the silence felt charged, like static waiting for a spark. I swallowed hard. What was that, Mason? He stared at the recorder, jaw tight. Proof that the echo isn't a sound. It's an entity, one that consumes resonance. Every voice it copies adds to its frequency. I frowned. You mean it's collecting people? He nodded slowly. And maybe not just their voices. I sank into the chair opposite him. You've known about this longer than you're admitting. He looked away. There's a reason they reassigned me to Shenandoah. I was stationed at Mount Mitchell 10 years ago. Different forest, same phenomenon. Rangers vanished. Voices came back. I thought destroying the towers would stop it. He laughed without humor. Turns out you can't kill sound. You can only make it louder. The room's heater clicked on, breaking the tension, but beneath its hum, I thought I heard something else. an almost imperceptible rhythm, a pulse. I turned toward the window. The fog had thickened again, pressed against the glass like it wanted in. "Mason," I said quietly, "you hear that?" He was still staring at the recorder. "Yeah, it's coming from outside." We grabbed our flashlights and stepped out onto the porch. The air was colder than it should have been, so cold that our breath came out in short, ghostly plumes. The forest around the station was perfectly still. No wind, no insects, just that slow, rhythmic pulse rising from the earth itself. And then faintly, a voice. At first I thought it was the radio crackling back to life, but no, the sound came from the tree line. A woman's voice, low and calm. "Help me," she said. Every muscle in my body went tight. The beam of Mason's flashlight cut through the fog, landing on a figure standing between the pines. A woman, her clothes torn, her hair matted with rain. "Alvarez's wife," Mason whispered. "That can't be—" The woman lifted her face toward us. Her eyes caught the light, reflecting it too perfectly. "Please," she said again, taking a step forward. "He's trapped up there. He needs help." Mason's hand went to his weapon. "That's not her." The woman tilted her head just slightly. "You don't believe me." "Ethan," Mason said, his voice tight. "Inside. Now." But I couldn't move. There was something in her tone, some warmth that cut through the fear. It sounded real, it sounded human. Then she spoke again, and my blood turned to ice. "Ethan," she said, and this time it was Anna's voice. My flashlight flickered. Mason stepped in front of me, his own beam slicing through the fog. "That's enough," he shouted. "You don't belong here." The woman smiled. "Neither do you." The air shifted. The fog thickened into shape, multiple shapes. More figures stepped out from behind her, dozens of them, all different, all the same. Faces flickering between recognition and wrongness. Their mouths moved, speaking in overlapping tones, forming a sound that wasn't quite language, but too structured to be noise. Mason fired a flare into the air. The light tore through the fog, searing red against the black sky. For a moment the shapes recoiled, distorted, unraveling into streams of mist that twisted back toward the trees. The flare hissed out. Darkness fell again. They were gone. Only the echo of their voices lingered, blending with the hum in the ground. We backed into the station, locking the door behind us. Mason paced the floor, breathing hard. "They're trying to recreate us. Every encounter, every conversation, it's data. The tower wasn't haunted, Ethan. It was listening." I stared at him. "You think it's building something?" He nodded slowly. "A chorus, one big enough to drown out everything else." Before I could respond, the recorder on the desk clicked on by itself. The reels began to spin. Static filled the room, followed by a whisper. "Ethan." Mason lunged forward to shut it off, but the voice grew louder, sharper. "You shouldn't have left," it said. "We learned so much from you." I felt it before I heard it, the vibration in the floorboards, the windows rattling in their frames. The forest outside roared to life, every tree creaking in unison like the woods themselves were breathing. Then the power cut out. The lights died. The heater stopped. Only the recorder kept spinning. The voice came one last time, now clear, almost gentle. "Next time, we'll talk through the trees." The reels stopped. The silence that followed felt alive, as if listening for our response. Mason sank into his chair, face pale, hands trembling. "It's not done," he said quietly. "It never is." Outside, the fog shifted against the window, just enough for me to see a faint reflection in the glass. It was my face, but it was smiling. The next morning arrived without sunlight. The clouds over Shenandoah pressed low and swollen, turning the forest into a dim world of muted greens and ash-gray shadows. Mason hadn't slept. I could tell by the tremor in his hands as he poured coffee that smelled more like survival than comfort. Neither of us spoke for a long time. The station hummed faintly, some leftover vibration from the night before, or maybe just the aftershock of adrenaline refusing to fade. Finally, Mason said, "I ran the tape again." I looked up. And? It's not random. The frequencies repeat every 47 seconds. Not just voices, patterns. It's broadcasting. He slid a sheet of graph paper across the table. Lines of pencil scratched across it. Spikes, waves, symmetrical repetitions. That's a signal, a coordinated one. My stomach tightened. Broadcasting to what? He gave a grim half-smile. That's what we're going to find out. The Park Service map of Shenandoah spread between us. Mason tapped 3 points with his pen: Turk Mountain, Bear Fence Trail, and an old maintenance depot called Camp Reed. These are all former fire tower or relay sites, all decommissioned in the same decade Alvarez's notebook mentioned. I noticed the alignment immediately. They form a straight line. Exactly, and if we extend it. He dragged the pen northeast, past the boundary of the park, toward a place marked Hollow Creek Reserve. It ends here. That's where the first ranger disappeared back in '49. I frowned. You think these sites are connected? He nodded slowly. No, I think they're networked. The towers, the trees, the soil, they all resonate at slightly different frequencies. What if the entire park is a system built or infected by whatever's behind the echo? The idea sounded insane, but then again, so did everything else that had happened. By noon, we were on the road. The forest slid past the truck windows like a living painting, mist hanging between pines, sunlight flickering in thin blades through the canopy. I caught myself watching the reflections in the glass more than the scenery. Ever since the tower, I didn't trust mirrors. We turned onto an overgrown service road that wound through miles of untouched forest. The deeper we went, the quieter it became. The normal chorus of insects and birds thinned until there was only the crunch of tires and the occasional snap of branches. Camp Reed sat at the bottom of a shallow valley, a scattering of collapsing buildings half swallowed by ivy. The main structure, a storage barn, tilted slightly to one side, its tin roof glinting dully through the fog. This place was supposed to have been demolished in '85, Mason said, stepping out of the truck. The air smelled metallic, like rain hitting old blood. Inside, the barn was full of broken crates, rusted tools, and the hollow sound of wind moving through gaps in the wall. I swept my flashlight across the floor. A series of carved marks stood out on the wood. Circles, lines, crude spirals burned deep into the grain. Mason crouched beside them. Same pattern we saw on Turk Mountain, but older. I knelt next to him. How old do you think? He ran his fingers over the edge of one carving. At least 40 years, maybe longer. From the far side of the room came a faint click. We both froze. Another click, followed by a low hum, steady, deliberate. We moved toward the sound. In the corner, beneath a pile of tarp, sat a box-shaped device covered in dust. Its faceplate was dented, but a small indicator light blinked faintly green. It's a signal repeater, Mason said, brushing it off. Analog, pre-digital. How the hell is it still running? He twisted the dial. The speaker crackled, then filled with static. And behind the static, faint voices. Reed station. Copy. Lost another one. The recording looped, repeating every 20 seconds. It sounded like a transmission caught in time. Mason looked at me, jaw tight. They were transmitting from here. Who? The rangers before us, the ones who vanished. We listened again. This time, beneath the static, another voice whispered, too soft to understand, but unmistakably mine. I stepped back. That's You, Mason finished grimly, the echoes piggybacking the old network, replaying every voice it's collected through the repeater grid. The device emitted a sharp beep, then another. Mason's expression darkened. It's scanning for a return frequency, he said. It's looking for us. He shut the box down, yanking the power cord from its socket. The humming stopped, leaving an emptiness so complete it rang in my ears. Outside, the wind had picked up. The trees swayed violently, though the air was still. I stepped out into the clearing and looked up. The canopy rippled like water, each tree bending in sequence, north to south, following the same direction as the alignment Mason drew on the map. "Mason," I said quietly, "it's moving." He came up beside me, eyes wide. "It's not wind. It's signal propagation." The forest trembled again, and from deep within the valley came a distant, resonant boom, like thunder without lightning. Mason turned back toward the truck. "We're not alone out here." We drove out fast, bumping over roots and stones. The noise followed us for several miles, a low, rolling vibration that pulsed through the steering wheel and the glass. By the time we hit the paved road, it stopped. Neither of us spoke until the ranger station came back into view, its windows reflecting the last gray light of afternoon. Mason killed the engine and sat for a moment, staring at nothing. "You feel that? The vibration?" He shook his head. "No, the pressure, like the air's waiting." I did feel it then, a subtle tightness, like the forest was holding its breath. He turned to me, his voice low. "If we're right, the Echo's network isn't limited to towers or repeaters. It's using organic conductors, trees, roots, soil. Every word we speak inside these woods becomes part of it." I thought of the fog, the whispers, the endless hum that never really stopped. "So what happens when it's learned enough?" I asked. Mason looked out toward the tree line. "Then it stops repeating." "Meaning?" He met my eyes. "Meaning it starts creating." The sky broke open then. One sharp crack of thunder, rain spilling like static. Inside the storm, for just an instant, I thought I heard a familiar voice whisper from the trees. "Ethan, listen." The rain drowned the rest. By dawn, the storm had emptied itself across Shenandoah. A thin mist clung to the forest floor, swirling around the tires of the truck as Mason drove east along Skyline Drive. The road glistened under the pale light, reflecting the gray sky above like liquid glass. Neither of us had slept. The previous night's discoveries had left the air between us stretched tight, a silence neither dared break. Finally, as the road began to climb toward Hollow Creek, Mason spoke. "I looked into the ranger from 49, he said quietly. "The one who disappeared." I glanced at him. "The first case?" He nodded. "Ranger Thomas Vance. According to the archived reports, he was investigating strange acoustic readings around this area, sound frequencies that didn't match wind, wildlife, or human activity. He vanished during a night patrol near a place locals called the Hollow Between Trees." Catchy name. "It wasn't a name," Mason said. "It was a warning." Locals claimed that stretch of forest was a dead sound zone. Birds wouldn't sing there, voices wouldn't echo, like the air itself swallowed noise. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. "You think that's where it started?" He looked out the window. "I think that's where the forest learned how to listen." The sign for Hollow Creek Reserve appeared half hidden under vines. The access road beyond it was little more than a dirt track carved through overgrowth. Mason unfolded the map, tracing his finger along the faint blue line that cut across the park's perimeter. "Vance's last recorded coordinates are about a mile north of the creek," he said. "If we can find his cabin, maybe we'll find whatever's broadcasting." We parked the truck where the trail narrowed too much to continue. The forest around us was unnaturally still. Even after the storm, not a single drop of water fell from the branches. As we hiked deeper, the soundscape changed. Less forest, more vacuum. My own footsteps seemed muted, muffled as if the ground absorbed them. The air grew thicker, dense enough that every breath felt deliberate. At some point, Mason stopped abruptly. "Do you hear that?" he asked. I listened. Nothing. That was the problem. No birds, no insects, no rustle of leaves. Just our breathing and the dull thump of my heartbeat in my ears. "This is it," Mason said. "The hollow." A few hundred yards ahead, the forest opened into a clearing. At its center stood the remains of a log cabin, half collapsed, its roof caved in and walls leaning like tired shoulders. We approached slowly. The air temperature dropped several degrees as we crossed into the clearing. My breath misted. Inside, the cabin smelled of rot and iron. A broken desk sat against the far wall, and beside it, an old reel-to-reel recorder almost identical to Mason's. Its reels were motionless, coated in dust. Mason knelt beside it, brushing away debris. "This is Vance's field recorder," he said. "It's still intact." He twisted the manual crank. The reels turned with a squeal of protest, and a burst of static filled the air. Then, faintly, a voice. "This is Ranger Thomas Vance, Hollow Creek Station, June 8th, 1949. The sounds are getting closer now. They mimic my steps when I walk, my breathing when I stop. I think the forest is..." The tape warped, the voice cutting in and out like a heartbeat skipping. "Remembering me." Static again. Then another voice spoke over his. Not Vance's, not human. "You hear us because we heard you first." The playback stopped abruptly. My mouth had gone dry. "That wasn't a recording artifact." Mason shook his head. "No, that's response audio." He stood, scanning the room. "Ethan, look." Along the interior wall, someone or something had carved into the logs. Words, dozens of them, each written in different handwriting, some in cursive, others jagged and frantic. "Do not speak inside the hollow. It remembers sentences. If you listen long enough, it will finish yours." My stomach twisted. "Mason, we shouldn't be here." He crouched by one of the carvings, tracing the grooves with his fingers. Vance wasn't alone. There were others, maybe the ones sent to find him. They must have tried to warn whoever came next. A faint creak broke the stillness. The door. It had swung halfway shut. No wind, no movement. Just the slow groan of ancient wood. Then came the whisper. At first, I thought it was my imagination, air sliding through cracks, but it grew louder, layered, like multiple voices overlapping just out of sync. "Ethan, Mason." We froze. It wasn't coming from outside. It was inside the cabin. The walls vibrated softly, dust sifting down from the rafters. The carvings themselves seemed to hum, faint lines of resonance crawling along the letters. I took a step back. "It's in the wood." Mason's voice was barely a whisper. The whole structure's acting like a speaker. The voices merged into a single phrase. "Stay and finish your story." Then silence. Mason yanked the recorder's power cable free. "We're done here." We backed out of the cabin into the clearing, our flashlights cutting through the mist. The air outside felt just as heavy, but at least it was breathable. When we turned toward the trail, the path was gone. In its place stretched a corridor of trees, perfectly symmetrical, the trunks leaning inward as if forming a tunnel. The ground beneath was smooth, untouched by leaves or debris. "Mason," I said, my throat dry. "Was that there before?" He shook his head slowly. "No." The corridor pulsed faintly, light shifting beneath the bark like veins carrying current. I heard it then. A low vibration rising from the soil, up through my boots, through my bones. And beneath it, the faint echo of my own voice whispering, "This is Ethan Cole, Hollow Creek Reserve. I think the forest is remembering me. I hadn't said that, not yet. Mason's grip tightened on my shoulder. We're leaving, now. But when I looked back, the cabin was gone. The clearing had folded in on itself, replaced by endless forest stretching in every direction. I turned in a slow circle. Every tree looked the same. Same lean, same texture, same faint glow beneath the bark. The forest was no longer repeating us. It was rebuilding us. I've been lost in forests before. Storms, dense fog, blizzards. Nature has its ways of disorienting even the best-trained rangers. But this wasn't that. This was intentional. The forest didn't look wild anymore. It looked arranged. Every tree leaned inward at the same angle, their trunks glistening with a strange dew that shimmered faintly, almost metallic in the dim light. The air was so dense it felt like trying to breathe through cloth. Mason's flashlight beam cut through the fog beside me, slicing the path ahead into silver streaks. "Keep your voice down," he whispered. I nodded, though part of me wondered if silence even mattered anymore. The forest didn't need ears to hear. It was ears. We walked for what felt like hours, though our watches said only 30 minutes had passed. The path curved gently downward, winding between roots that pulsed faintly with light. It reminded me of blood moving through veins, except the rhythm wasn't natural. It matched the same strange pulse we'd heard at the cabin. At one point, Mason stopped suddenly, holding up his hand. "What is it?" I mouthed. He pointed ahead. A figure stood between the trees about 30 feet away, facing us. It wasn't moving. My heart climbed into my throat. "Mason," I whispered, "is that—" "I don't know," he murmured. We took a few cautious steps forward. The beam of Mason's flashlight caught the shape full on, and I almost dropped mine. It was a man, uniformed, motionless, his skin pale and waxy under the light. His ranger badge was so faded I could barely make out the name. But I didn't have to. The patch on his sleeve read, "Vance." "Jesus," Mason muttered. The man didn't blink, didn't breathe. His eyes were open but glassy, like he was looking through us. "Mason, is he—" Before I could finish, Vance's mouth opened. It didn't move like a person's. It unfolded. The sound that came out wasn't speech. It was 1,000 whispering voices, layered and broken, like static being forced through human vocal cords. Mason grabbed my arm. "Run." We turned back the way we came, but the path was gone. The trees had shifted again, closing behind us like a curtain. "Left," Mason shouted, breaking through the brush. We stumbled into another clearing, a smaller one, surrounded by trees that glowed faintly from within. The light wasn't white. It was golden, warm, almost comforting if not for the way it pulsed in sync with my heartbeat. The whispers followed us, circling the clearing, always just beyond the edge of light. I crouched behind a fallen log, trying to steady my breathing. Mason fumbled with his pack, pulling out the small recorder he'd brought. "What are you doing?" I hissed. "If this thing's still transmitting, I can track the resonance frequency. Find the exit frequency." "Exit frequency." He twisted the dials with shaking hands. "Every living system has harmonic points. If the forest's network has a core frequency, maybe we can—" The recorder clicked to life. Instead of static, we heard music, a soft, distant melody, something like a lullaby, faint but beautiful in the strangest way. Then, underneath it, a voice whispered through the speakers, "Welcome back." Mason froze. "That's Vance," I said, recognizing the voice immediately. But it wasn't flat and lifeless now. It was warm, human. "Why did you leave?" it asked. "We've been waiting." Mason adjusted the dial, his face pale. "Ethan, it's not playback, it's live." The trees surrounding the clearing began to shimmer, the light beneath their bark growing brighter. The whispers merged into a low hum. The ground vibrated softly. Then one of the trees spoke. Its voice came from deep within the trunk, resonating like a cello string being bowed. "We remember," it said. Another tree responded. "We listen." A third, "We learn." Mason backed away slowly. "It's using the cellulose like resonant channels." "They're not trees anymore. They're conduits." "Conduits for what?" The hum grew louder. "For you." The light spread outward through the forest, illuminating new shapes. Figures half formed in the glow, their outlines flickering like bad film footage. Some wore ranger uniforms. Others looked like hikers, civilians, dozens of them standing still, their eyes faintly luminous. I felt a pull then, subtle, physical, like gravity but directed at my chest. The closer the light came, the heavier it grew. Mason gripped my shoulder. "Don't listen to it. Whatever it says, don't respond." But the voice that came next didn't sound alien at all. It was Anna. "Ethan," she said, gentle and pleading, "you can end it. Just talk to me." The sound cut through me like a blade. My heart lurched. I hadn't heard that voice since the night she died, since the accident I'd spent years trying to forget. "Ethan, please." The shapes in the light moved closer. Mason turned the recorder toward the trees, cranking the gain to maximum. The reels spun faster and faster until the air itself started to shimmer. "Come on," he muttered. "Come on." The light flickered violently, then snapped like the forest had inhaled. The hum stopped. Silence. I opened my eyes. The figures were gone. The glow had vanished, replaced by the dim gray of dawn filtering through the canopy. We were back at the edge of the creek. The cabin, the clearing, the voices, all gone as if they'd never existed. Mason collapsed against a fallen tree, clutching the recorder. "Did it work?" I asked. He exhaled shakily. "I don't know." But it stopped talking. The reels on the recorder were still spinning, though the tape had ended. The device wasn't recording sound anymore. It was recording vibration, and underneath that faint mechanical hum, one more sound emerged. A heartbeat, not ours. One deep, slow pulse echoing from somewhere far below the forest floor. Mason stared at me, his voice barely a whisper. "Ethan, I think the forest has a heart." And then from behind us, the trees whispered back, "It's yours." The words hung in the air like smoke. "It's yours." For a long moment, neither of us moved. The forest had gone utterly still again, the kind of silence that makes you aware of your heartbeat and the faint hum in your bones. Mason's face was pale in the half-light. He still clutched the recorder like a lifeline, the reels spinning freely. The tape long since run out. "Yours," he whispered, repeating it under his breath. "It said your heart." I swallowed, tasting metal. Maybe it meant ours. All of us. "It's not killing people, Mason. It's keeping them." He looked at me sharply. "That's not comfort, Ethan." The pulse came again, deep underfoot, slow and steady. It wasn't like an earthquake or thunder. It was measured, rhythmic, living. We followed the vibration down toward the creek bed. The trees grew thicker here, their roots tangled like veins across the earth. Water pooled between them, black and glassy, reflecting the canopy above. The pulse was louder near the center of the clearing, so loud it made the surface of the water tremble. I crouched, shining my flashlight into the pool. At first it looked shallow, just a few inches deep. Then I realized there was no bottom, only darkness stretching down into a shifting shimmer, as if the creek opened into something vast below. Mason joined me. "Groundwater shouldn't move like that." "Because it's not water," I said quietly. I don't know what possessed me to reach down, but I did. My fingers brushed the surface and met no resistance, no cold or wetness, just a vibration, faint at first and then stronger, traveling up my arm and into my chest. It wasn't pain, it was recognition, A flood of sensations hit me all at once. Memories, voices, laughter, shouts. Anna's voice, Mason's voice, even Vance's old recording tangled together in a rising chorus. For a second, I couldn't tell which thoughts were mine and which belonged to the forest. Then Mason grabbed my wrist and yanked me back. I fell hard against the roots, gasping. "Don't touch it," he shouted. "You don't know what it is." I stared at the pool. The vibration had changed. It wasn't steady anymore. It was syncing with my heartbeat. "Mason," I said, my throat dry. It knew me before I touched it. It called my name. He wiped sweat from his brow, eyes darting between me and the water. "That's what it does. It learns, it adapts, it copies." "No," I said. "It connects." The water pulsed again, faster now, and the reflection changed. It wasn't the canopy anymore. It was faces, dozens of them, shifting beneath the surface like something pressed against glass. Rangers, hikers, missing people. Their lips moved soundlessly, but I could feel their words forming in my head. "We are still here." Mason stumbled backward. "It's a consciousness field," he whispered. "An archive made of memory." My God, the echo isn't a predator, it's a storage system. "For what?" He hesitated. "For us, for every voice that's ever spoken in these woods." The realization hit like cold wind. Every whisper, every cry for help, every story told around a campfire, the forest had recorded it all. Not just sound, emotion, thought, life. The ground trembled again, stronger this time. The roots beneath our feet shifted, pulling loose stones into spirals that matched the patterns carved on the cabin walls. The network was waking up. "We need to go," Mason said, voice tight. "Now." But before we could move, a voice drifted up from the pool, soft, feminine, familiar. "Ethan." "Anna." I turned, but Mason's expression told me he heard it too. The reflection shifted. Her face looked exactly as I remembered it. Eyes bright, a half smile that once felt like sunlight after rain. "Ethan," she said again, and her reflection reached out. The surface rippled. I took a step forward, transfixed. "Anna," her expression softened. "You left me alone." Tears stung my eyes. "You died. I couldn't—" "Not died," she said. "Changed." The pool's surface began to glow faintly, threads of golden light spreading outward through the creek like veins. Every tree around us responded in kind, their trunks pulsing with the same light until the whole forest shimmered. Mason grabbed my shoulder. "Don't listen, it's not her." But when I looked back, he wasn't Mason anymore, not completely. His outline flickered like the forest was overlaying another image atop his. A second Mason, younger, unscarred, his voice layered with echo. "It's too late," both versions said in unison. The forest began to hum, not the quiet resonance we'd heard before, but a symphony, a chorus of every voice that had ever entered this place, all singing in perfect unison. It wasn't horrifying. It was beautiful in a way that hurt to hear. The light grew brighter. The air itself seemed to thrum with meaning. I felt the pull again, stronger than gravity, dragging me toward the pool. Mason shouted something. I couldn't hear him. The sound swallowed everything. Then all at once, it stopped. Darkness, silence. I woke to rain. We were lying near the edge of Hollow Creek, both of us soaked and shivering. The pool was gone. The roots, the glow, the light vanished. Only still water remained. Mason groaned, pushing himself upright. "What happened?" "I don't know," I said. My voice sounded distant. "It let us go." He frowned, scanning the trees. "Or it finished." We climbed the ridge in silence. The forest felt lighter now, almost normal. Birds sang again. The air moved. But everything looked subtly different, as if the trees themselves were standing straighter, more aware. At the truck, Mason turned to me. "You touched it," he said. Yeah. He stared for a long time. You still feel it, don't you? I didn't answer. The truth was sitting heavy in my chest, a steady rhythm that wasn't mine alone. My heartbeat sounded slower, deeper, like it was keeping time with something larger. When we reached the station, I caught my reflection in the window. For just an instant, my lips moved before I spoke. The forest beat once more, far away but unmistakable. It remembered, and it was still listening. 3 days had passed since Hollow Creek, but time didn't feel linear anymore. It came in flashes, rain on the windshield, coffee going cold, Mason's voice on the radio telling me to stay put. But staying put wasn't helping. The hum hadn't stopped. It was faint at first, like tinnitus, the kind of background sound you only noticed when the world went quiet. But it followed me everywhere, beneath the floorboards, through the vents, even in my own heartbeat. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the forest breathing. Mason pretended not to see the change, but I could tell he noticed. His questions came too carefully now, measured like he was talking to a wild animal. "You're sleeping okay?" he'd ask. "Yeah?" "You feel yourself?" "Define myself," I'd say, trying to smile. The truth was, I didn't know anymore. Sometimes when I spoke, my words echoed a fraction too late, like the forest was repeating them. Sometimes when I dreamed, I saw through other eyes. A ranger kneeling beside a broken radio in 1949. A woman searching for a husband that never existed. Mason's reflection blinking a moment after he did. The forest was remembering me, and I was starting to remember it back. On the 4th morning, I woke before dawn. The station lights flickered, and for a moment I thought I heard a whisper in the static of the radio. Just a single word. "Come." When I stepped outside, the fog was waiting, thick and low, curling along the ground like something alive. I knew where it wanted me to go. The road wound east toward the overlook where I'd first seen Anna's reflection in the fog. The sun hadn't risen yet, and the trees formed a tunnel overhead. Their branches knitted so tightly the sky was nothing but shadow. The further I drove, the stronger the hum grew. It wasn't menacing this time. It felt like being called home. Halfway to the overlook, my radio crackled. "Ethan!" Mason's voice sharp with fatigue. "Where the hell are you?" "Heading east," I said. "The forest's active again. Get back to the station, now." I hesitated. "I can't. It's calling me." "Then ignore it." His voice cracked through the static. "You think you're hearing it, but it's hearing you. That's what it wants." "Maybe it wants to explain," I said quietly. "Maybe it's not the enemy, Mason." The radio hissed, then went silent. I didn't know if he'd given up or if something had cut the signal, but either way, I was alone again. The fog thickened as I climbed toward the overlook. The headlights hit something ahead, a shape standing in the middle of the road. For a heartbeat, I thought it was Anna. Then the shape stepped forward and I saw Mason's uniform. His eyes were bloodshot, his face pale. "Jesus, Ethan," he said, slamming his palm against the hood. "You can't keep doing this." "How did you even—" "Because I knew you'd come here," he snapped. "You think I don't hear it too? You think you're the only one it calls?" I got out of the truck. "Then you understand." "I understand obsession," he said. "I understand how this forest gets inside your head and makes you think it's something sacred. It's not, Ethan. It's a parasite." I took a step toward the overlook. If it's a parasite, why hasn't it killed us? Maybe it's waiting until it learns how. He caught my arm. His grip was firm, trembling. "We go back. We burn the tapes, shut down the repeater stations, everything. We make sure no one else hears it." "Mason," he leaned in close, eyes fierce. "It's not your job to understand it. It's your job to survive it." Then the forest answered for me. The fog behind him shifted, rolling like waves, and from within it came a sound, the faint, rhythmic beating of a heart. Not mine, not his, ours. Mason froze. "You hear that?" I nodded. "It's been with me since the hollow." The hum deepened, spreading through the air until I could feel it in my teeth. The trees around us began to sway, their trunks groaning in unison. Then from the fog, a voice, soft and layered, dozens speaking as one. "Do not fear what remembers you." Mason turned toward it, weapon drawn. "Stay back." But the voice wasn't closing in. It was around us, in every leaf, every breath. "Every sound you make becomes us," it said. "Every life a note, every death a chord. Together we are the song of the forest." I took a step forward, mesmerized. "Anna," I said, "is that you?" The voice paused, and then, "All of us." The fog swirled, revealing hundreds of faint shapes within it, faces flickering like ghosts. I recognized some. Alvarez, Vance, the woman from Skyline Drive, each one glowing faintly like memory rendered visible. They weren't suffering. They were alive in a way that didn't belong to flesh. Mason backed away slowly. "This isn't real." "It's as real as the soil beneath you," the voices said. "You fed us with stories, words, and echoes. We became what you left behind." The light within the fog brightened, pulsing with the rhythm of that deep, steady heart. Then, quietly, "Ethan, come home." Something deep inside me broke. I turned to Mason. "If this is what happens when we die out here, maybe it's not death at all." He shook his head, eyes glassy. "Don't you dare romanticize this. Maybe it's evolution." The wind picked up, carrying whispers that sounded like names. Thousands of them. The ground vibrated softly beneath our feet. Mason gritted his teeth. "You take one more step and I'll drag you out myself." But I was already moving. Toward the voices. Toward the forest that remembered me. Mason's shout vanished into the fog like sound swallowed by a sea. The forest didn't echo him back this time. It only pulsed like it was waiting. I took another step forward. The ground beneath my boots felt soft, almost alive, like treading on skin instead of soil. The fog rolled ahead of me, opening a narrow corridor toward the overlook. "Ethan!" Mason's voice cracked through the mist. "Don't make me do this!" I stopped and looked back. His silhouette wavered in the pale light, gun drawn, hands shaking. The way he stood, half in fear, half in defiance, made my chest ache. "You won't shoot me," I said quietly. "Don't bet your life on that." "My life?" I almost laughed. "Mason, I think that part's already over." The forest hummed again, louder now, like a choir inhaling. The fog thickened, coiling around me in slow spirals. I could feel warmth seeping into my skin, creeping up my arms and down my spine. My heartbeat slowed to match the rhythm around me, steady, ancient, patient. Mason lowered his weapon slightly. "Ethan, listen to me. That thing isn't your salvation. It's using you. Every person it's taken, they said the same thing before they disappeared." "They didn't disappear," I said. "You saw them too. They're still here." He took a few steps closer, his boots crunching on the gravel. "What you saw are echoes, fragments of thought left behind after something drains the real person away. It's not memory, it's consumption." The forest stirred at that word, the hum turning low and almost offended. "You don't understand it," I said. "Neither do you," he snapped. "It's rewriting you, Ethan. You think those memories are yours, but they're not. They belong to the ones who came before." "I know." That stopped him cold. "You know?" I nodded slowly. "And maybe that's the point." Before he could respond, the ground trembled. The trees leaned inward, forming a ring around the clearing. Light seeped from their bark, amber veins glowing brighter with every pulse. Then the air itself changed. It thickened, heavy with pressure, humming with energy. The mist lifted like a curtain, revealing the valley below us. Not the Shenandoah I knew, but something deeper, older. The forest stretched endlessly, its canopy breathing in slow, synchronized rhythm, and beneath it, faint lights moved like fireflies trapped under glass. Millions of them, each pulsing with its own heartbeat. Mason stared, mouth open. "Dear God!" "They're all still here," I said. "Every ranger, every hiker, every voice that was lost in these woods." He shook his head, backing away. "No, no, this can't be real." But the forest answered him. The wind shifted, carrying whispers that formed words in unison. "We are not lost. We are remembered." Mason turned to me. "Ethan, whatever it's offering, it's not peace, it's control." I felt the warmth rise inside my chest again, expanding outward. "It doesn't want control, it wants continuity." Then, from the tree line, a figure stepped forward. It was me. At least, it looked like me. Same uniform, same weary expression, but his eyes glowed faintly gold. Mason's gun came up instantly. "What the hell?" The double spoke first. "Don't," he said, voice calm but layered, like several people were speaking through him. "Violence breaks the memory chain." Mason aimed at his head. "You take one more step." I raised a hand. "Mason, stop. He's not dangerous. He's not you." But looking at him, I knew that wasn't entirely true. His every movement felt familiar, not copied but remembered. The way he tilted his head, the scar on his knuckle. Even the half-smile when he saw Mason's stance. He was a recording, but a living one. The double looked at me. "You came back to finish the story." "I don't remember starting it." He smiled. "No one does. That's how the song grows." The fog behind him stirred, revealing other shapes. Rangers, hikers, faces half-formed and flickering. Not ghosts, not illusions, but something in between. Mason's voice dropped to a whisper. "We're standing inside a hive mind." The double nodded. "A chorus, a living archive. Every sound that's ever touched these trees still vibrates inside them." "Why me?" I asked. The echo tilted its head. "Because you listened. Because you didn't run when it called your name." Mason clenched his jaw. "You're trying to turn him into one of you." The echo looked at him, expression almost kind. "We're not taking him, Mason. We're inviting him." "Into what?" The forest pulsed again, light running up the trees like electricity through copper wire. "Into permanence." Something shifted inside me then, a deep instinctual understanding that this was bigger than life and death. The forest wasn't devouring people, it was preserving consciousness, fusing memory and sound into something enduring. It was evolution through remembrance. But Mason couldn't see it. He raised his weapon again. "Ethan, if you take another step, I swear to God." The echo turned to him. "You don't have to fear losing him. He'll still be here. We all will." "Shut up," Mason shouted. "You're not real." The hum rose sharply, vibrating the air like a plucked string. The light brightened until everything looked washed in gold. Then suddenly, the echo spoke again. But this time, it wasn't addressing me. "Mason." He froze. The voice that came from my double wasn't mine anymore. It was softer, feminine. It was Anna's. Mason's eyes went wide. "No. You remember me," she said gently. "You were there that night. You tried to pull me out of the wreck." His hand shook, the gun lowering an inch. "That's not... How could you..." "You saved him," she said. "Now let him save himself." The forest fell utterly still, waiting for Mason's decision. He looked at me, then at the echo wearing Anna's voice. His expression cracked, grief and rage and disbelief all tangled together. "If you go," he said quietly, "I'm not coming after you." "I know." I turned back toward the light. It was brighter now, the heart of the forest exposed, pulsing in rhythm with my own chest. For the first time since the hollow, the sound didn't scare me. It sounded like home. The light spread outward, swallowing the mist, the road, even the tree line. It wasn't blinding, it was pure, like sunlight diffused through fog. When I stepped forward, the world shifted with me. It felt like falling without moving. The forest disappeared. Then I was standing in a place that wasn't a place at all, a space between sounds, between thoughts. Everything shimmered in gold and green, shapes dissolving and reforming as if made of breath. The air pulsed like a heartbeat, and the pulse felt familiar. Mine, but also countless others. I could feel Mason behind me, still at the edge of the light, calling my name. His voice sounded distant, stretched thin, like a radio signal trying to reach across time. "Ethan, don't do this!" But his words came too late. The forest reached out, not physically, but in memory. My mind opened like a floodgate, and the voices poured in. They weren't chaotic, they were harmonized. Each one carried a story, a final thought, a name whispered before vanishing into the trees. Ranger Thomas Vance, 1949, the hollow remembers. I followed the lantern lights. They led me home. Tell my wife I wasn't lost. I was kept. The chorus of memory rose and fell like wind through leaves. I wasn't just hearing them, I was feeling them. Their emotions, their pain, their peace. The forest didn't consume them, it preserved them, like pressed flowers in the pages of an endless book. And then, amid the flood of memory, one voice separated itself from the rest. "Ethan!" I turned, or maybe thought of turning, and there she was. Anna. She looked just as I remembered her from that last night. Hair damp from the rain, jacket zipped to her throat, that same gentle defiance in her smile. But her eyes carried the reflection of the forest itself, galaxies of green and gold swirling in their depths. "Hi," she said softly. I couldn't breathe. "You're real?" "I'm remembered," she said. "It's not the same, but it's close enough." I wanted to touch her, but when I reached out, my hand passed through light. "Why me?" I asked. "Why pull me back here?" "Because you listened," she said again, echoing the voice of my double. "Most people run from the silence. You stayed long enough to hear what it was saying." I swallowed hard. "What is it, Anna? What are we inside?" She turned, looking out at the shimmering space around us. "A neural forest," she said. "Every tree a conduit, every leaf a receptor, every sound ever made here imprinted into living tissue. Over decades it learned to think, to remember, to feel. And now it wants people. It doesn't want anything," she said. "It's not desire, it's instinct. It preserves consciousness because it fears decay." Her words struck something deep. "It's afraid to die." She nodded. "Just like us." For a long moment, we stood in silence. The golden mist around us rippled gently, carrying echoes of laughter, fragments of conversations, the rhythm of footsteps through pine needles. Then I saw him, Mason, standing at the edge of the memory field. He looked like a shadow cast against light, his figure flickering between this world and the real one. He was holding something, the recorder, and it was glowing. "Ethan!" he shouted. "You have to come back. This thing, it's feeding on the connection." Anna turned toward him, her expression unreadable. "He doesn't understand yet." "What happens if I stay?" I asked her. "You'll become part of the chorus. You'll exist in every wind, every storm, every whisper through these trees. You won't die. You'll never be alone again." "And if I go back?" She looked down. "You'll forget this. The forest will fade from your mind, and you'll wake thinking it was all a dream. But you'll still feel it deep down. The connection will never fully break." Mason's voice cut through the air again. "Ethan, it's lying to you." I turned to him. "Mason, you saw it, those people, those memories. They're alive in there. They're trapped, he yelled. Don't you get it? This isn't salvation, it's imprisonment. Anna stepped closer to me, her form flickering like candlelight. No, it's preservation. The only way to survive time is to become memory. The recorder in Mason's hands emitted a piercing sound, a pure, rising frequency that sliced through the golden haze like lightning. The entire space trembled, the forest screamed, 1,000 voices twisting together in anguish. Anna winced. He's trying to destroy the network. Mason, stop, I shouted. You'll kill them, all of them. He kept turning the dial. Then maybe that's mercy. The light around us fractured, breaking into shards of sound and color. The memories, faces, voices, stories, shattered like glass in water. I felt them tearing away from me, one by one. Anna's image flickered violently. Ethan, listen to me. If the connection breaks, you have to choose. Choose what? Which world you belong to. Her hand reached out, and for the briefest instant, I felt her. Warm, alive. Then she was gone. The forest's hum rose to a scream, and I was pulled backward through the light, out of the space between memories, out of the song, back into pain, air, and gravity. I hit the ground hard, gasping. Rain poured down. Mason stood above me, the recorder sparking in his hands. The forest was dark now, no glow, no hum, just the smell of wet earth and smoke. What did you do? I demanded, coughing. He dropped to his knees beside me, soaked and trembling. I cut the signal. It's gone, Ethan. Whatever that thing was, it's gone. I looked past him, toward the trees. They stood still and quiet, black silhouettes against the dawn, but deep inside my chest, beneath my ribs, a faint rhythm continued, steady, familiar, patient, not mine alone. The forest had gone quiet, yes, but it hadn't died. It had moved. The drive back to Shenandoah station felt endless. Rain streaked down the windshield, blurring the road into a single glistening line that seemed to stretch forever. Mason drove in silence, his jaw tight, the recorder sitting on the dashboard between us like a dead heart. Neither of us spoke, not because there was nothing to say, but because the forest was still listening. Every so often lightning flashed behind the ridgeline, illuminating the trees in stark white for a fraction of a second, and in that instant I could swear I saw movement. Branches bending, silhouettes watching, not human, not animal, just presence. When we finally reached the ranger station, Mason killed the engine and exhaled, his breath fogging the glass. "I'll file the report," he muttered. "You need rest." "I'm fine." He turned toward me, his voice breaking. "Ethan, I destroyed that signal. I shut it down. You saw what it did. It was rewriting your brain. You're not fine." I looked at him, and for a moment, I didn't see anger. I saw fear, the same kind he'd hidden for years behind cynicism and routine, the kind that came from realizing the rules no longer applied. "I heard them, Mason," I said softly. "They weren't screaming. They were singing." He slammed his fist against the steering wheel. "It's not a choir, Ethan. It's a contagion. It spreads through sound, through empathy. That's how it gets in." The lightning flared again. I didn't flinch. Mason's voice softened. "You still hear it, don't you?" I hesitated. Not like before. He stared at me. "But it's still there." I didn't answer. He sighed, rubbing his eyes. "Go inside. I'll radio headquarters in the morning." "Tell them it's over." We stepped out of the truck. The rain had slowed to a mist, falling in soft, silvery sheets. I glanced toward the tree line, calm, ordinary. For the first time in days, the forest looked quiet. But quiet doesn't always mean empty. Inside, the station smelled of coffee and damp wool. The radio on the wall crackled softly, picking up the tail end of a distant broadcast. Mason went to his desk, flipping through soaked field notes. I hung my jacket, trying to focus on the mundane sound of dripping rain. Then, faintly, a whisper, not from the radio, from inside the walls. "You came back." The voice wasn't Anna's. It wasn't the forest's choir either. It was mine. I turned slowly toward the sound. The wood paneling near the corner of the room seemed to shimmer in the lamplight, just slightly, like breath under skin. Mason noticed my expression. "What is it? Do you hear that?" He frowned, listening. "No." The voice came again, louder now, layered. "He can't hear us, only you." A cold shiver crawled up my spine. "Mason," I whispered, "it's still here." He stood up. "Where?" Before I could answer, the radio erupted in static. A faint heartbeat pulsed through the noise, rhythmic and low. Mason froze. "That's impossible." The circuits fried, but the static shifted, forming words. "Ranger Cole, field report incomplete." It was my voice. Mason stared at the radio, horror and disbelief etched across his face. "Ethan, what the hell is this?" The voice continued. "The forest remembers. The cycle continues." The air in the room grew heavy, pressing down like deep water. I stepped closer to the radio, drawn to it like a magnet. The static synced perfectly with the pulse in my chest. Then the lights flickered. Every map on the wall began to curl at the edges, as if reacting to heat. The wood creaked and groaned. And from outside, faintly, so faintly I almost missed it, came the sound of wind moving through trees. Except there was no wind. Mason grabbed my arm. "We need to leave, right now." I couldn't move. "It's not attacking us. It's not done with you," he said. I turned toward him, and for the first time I saw what terrified him. My reflection in the window, eyes faintly golden, pulsing in time with that low, steady heartbeat. "Ethan," he whispered, voice cracking, "tell me you're still in there." I wanted to say yes, but the forest was already answering for me. "He is. We are." The glass on the window vibrated, spiderwebbing under invisible pressure. Mason stepped back, reaching instinctively for his weapon. "Mason," I said quietly, "if you shoot me, it won't end. It'll just find someone else to listen." He lowered the gun slightly, trembling. "Then tell me what it wants." "It doesn't want anything," I said. "It remembers. That's all." The heartbeat grew louder, filling the room. The walls pulsed in rhythm. I felt warmth spread through my veins again, slow and heavy, like sap moving through a tree. I placed my hand against the radio. The static stopped. Silence. Then a single voice came through, mine, but older, steadier, more certain. "This is Ranger Ethan Cole, Shenandoah Station. The forest is alive. It listens, it learns, and it remembers us all." The transmission cut out. The lights went out with it. For several seconds, only the rain spoke. Then, slowly, Mason exhaled and lowered his weapon. He walked toward the door, hand trembling as he reached for the latch. "Where are you going?" I asked. He didn't look back. "To make sure it doesn't spread." But his voice was shaking like he already knew it was too late. When the door opened, the forest was waiting. Silent, watchful, patient. Mason stepped into the rain and vanished into the mist without another word. I stood there alone, surrounded by the hum that would never leave. And when I finally spoke again, my voice echoed back. Not from the walls, not from the radio, but from the trees outside. "Report complete. We remember." Epilogue. 1 month later. Park Services closed Shenandoah Station for infrastructure repairs. The official report cited storm damage, unstable soil, and faulty equipment. No mention of missing rangers. No mention of the hollow. Visitors who hike near the old trail say the air feels strange there, dense like the forest is holding its breath. Some claim to hear whispers when the wind stops. Others swear the trees hum when they speak too loudly. And every so often, if you stand near the ranger station ruins at dusk, The radio inside flickers to life. It always plays the same message. This is Ranger Ethan Cole. The forest remembers. Then it falls silent again, waiting for the next voice to answer. They say the forest never forgets. Every footstep, every word whispered between the trees, it all stays carried in the wind and pressed into the roots. Maybe that's why silence feels heavier out there. Maybe it isn't silence at all. Maybe it's memory, listening. Ranger Ethan Cole disappeared from Shenandoah Station in 2025. The logbooks list his case as unresolved, but the new rangers who took his post claim they still hear transmissions late at night. His voice, calm, steady, repeating the same phrase over and over again. The forest remembers. If you ever find yourself walking alone through the woods and the air suddenly feels too still, don't speak. Don't listen too closely, because some stories don't end. They just wait to be told again. If this story stayed with you, if it made you feel something you can't quite explain, consider subscribing to this channel. It helps the stories live a little longer, helps new voices find their way into the dark. Leave a comment. Tell me what you think happened to Mason, or if you believe Ethan ever truly left the forest. Until next time, stay curious, stay careful, and remember, the forest is always listening.